What's up, guys? Don't forget to smash that like button, drop a comment, hype up the video, and if you're new here, hit that subscribe and join the family. One day, the world suddenly came to an end. A pandemic, war, economic decline, and food shortages. One day, the world suddenly came to an end. A pandemic, war, economic decline, and food shortages. These ominous signs appeared, but the one who delivered the final blow to humanity's coffin wasn't humanity itself. The ones responsible for the end of humanity were game characters, monsters. What happened next was quite predictable. Just like in novels, meta-humans with special abilities appeared. However, there was a difference between novels and reality. The meta-humans weren't strong enough to stop the apocalypse. 3 days later, the world was completely destroyed. Someone is eating chips. And yes, the world hasn't ended entirely. That's because he's still living normally, but he's alone. And the only one living in this 100 square meter apartment, his mother, father, grandfather, and grandmother are all outside. His father had finally decided to buy this place. It was purchased with a full loan of 200 million won from the bank and all the family's assets, which totaled more than 200 million won. The reason he was there, even though he wasn't born rich, was because someone had to live there for 2 years before they could enjoy the tax benefits of the purchase. That's why he was living in this place and got trapped there after the sudden apocalypse. Until the protagonist notices something bad. His phone says the connection is weak and asks to reconnect. He sighs until he hears a loud noise and looks ahead, coming face to face with a monster heading toward his window. The protagonist falls to the floor and the monster is near the window making loud noises. Lying on the floor, the protagonist starts screaming with his eyes closed until he opens them and sees a system message saying that an unauthorized entity is trying to enter. Supreme Recluse, House Declaration, Passive. No one may enter the house without the ruler's permission. The protagonist feels relieved. He gets up, and the reason he's survived until now is because of that skill. The boy tries to open the door but can't and gets really frustrated. He steps back and kicks the door. On the third day, after the world had met its end, thanks to that damn skill that protects him, he's completely trapped in this house. Another notification arrives saying that the Supreme Recluse cannot leave the house. The protagonist doesn't like being called Supreme Recluse and says he can't do anything about it. He looks down and realizes the problem is food. His fridge stopped working yesterday when the power went out and he was surviving on leftover side dishes. But they don't last long. Now, only a few packs of ramyeon remain. Then the boy notices something. System notifications arrive saying he hunted a calican and gained a large amount of EXP. His skill level increased. The protagonist walks to his balcony and sees creatures eating the bird's corpse and wonders if he ended up hunting it because it crashed into his house. More notifications arrive saying a new skill was obtained. Nearby loot met the requirements and the loot is being calculated. Then another sound is heard. The creatures radiating dark mana start screaming, and the protagonist, confused, wonders why they're suddenly acting like that. The creatures keep screaming, and the system notifies that the loot calculation is complete. 2,203,241 won have been deposited into the Supreme Recluse's wallet. The boy asks what that means. Then the lights turn on. The protagonist reacts and asks if the electricity came back. More notifications arrive. No one may enter the house without the ruler's permission. Dignity, preservation, passive. To preserve dignity, half of the house's functions will be restored. The boy asks if the house functions have really been restored. He rushes to his fridge and opens it excitedly. He also runs to the faucet, the stove, and smiles, saying everything is working like before. It's as if the world hasn't ended. The protagonist grabs his phone and wonders if it came back too, but then realizes the connection is still bad and that he can try to reconnect. The boy grumbles and notices something. He keeps looking at his phone. Then he walks over to the computer and starts looking at photos of his mother holding him as a baby, and also sees himself older, with his family gathered and from his birthday. The protagonist keeps looking at those moments with his family, staring intently, until he clenches his teeth and says he needs to bring his family back no matter what. He gets up and says he must. The boy looks to the side and the system notifies that he can purchase items listed in the shop at their original prices. The protagonist asks about a shop. More notifications come in to list the items and ask if he'd like to list the first item. He watches, and seeing that it shows how much money he has, it seems to be connected to the Supreme Recluse's wallet. The boy tries to jump out the window, but notifications appear saying he can't leave the house. The Supreme Recluse thinks it was just as he expected. It didn't work. Even with his skill level increasing a little, he still can't leave. One thing is certain, if he hunts monsters, his level increases, and he gains a new skill. And if he levels up, maybe he'll get a skill that allows him to leave. He wonders how he's going to eliminate monsters in this state and thinks it's hard to expect a situation like before to happen again. So he decides to wait. He thinks he might be able to eliminate goblins. Later, still in his house, the protagonist grabs a small water bottle. goes to the window, throws it, and says it's great and that it works. He realizes he can throw items outside the house. He grabs a dumbbell and says he'll try using it. Then the boy notices something. The creatures are communicating and leaving the area, and the Supreme Recluse tells them not to run. He lifts the dumbbell and throws it outside, hoping he doesn't miss, but he misses again, hitting the bird that was already finished off. The protagonist thinks he's screwed, and now this is all he's got left. He wonders what to do since there's nothing else in the house he can use to eliminate them, and he's not strong enough to throw TVs or computers. Then he hears another noise, and when he looks to the side, he sees the creatures enraged. The boy looks on in fear. The creatures make noises and run in his direction. The Supreme Recluse thinks to himself to wait. It's not that bad at this distance. He widens his eyes and opens the store. The system asks to list an item. The protagonist presses to list the item. The system asks if he wants to list this item, and the boy says yes. The dumbbell begins to be listed. It's a classic 3 kilograms non-slip dumbbell, listed at $16,991. The Supreme Recluse realizes it's the same price he paid online and thinks the market prices here are the same as before the end of the world. The system asks if he wants to purchase the item. The protagonist says yes. Then a light flashes and the item is summoned. The boy sees that it worked, and it's great, it has a good weight. He throws it and ends up hitting one of the creatures on the head. Notifications arrive saying he hunted a goblin and gained EXP. 3,345 won were deposited into his wallet. The Supreme Recluse gets excited, and the goblins realize their comrade has died, look up, and start running. The protagonist gets annoyed and buys 3 sets of classic 3 kilograms non-slip dumbbells. The dumbbells are summoned, and the boy continues throwing them and hitting the goblins. And notifications keep coming that he hunted a goblin, and 2,512 won were deposited into the Supreme Recluse's wallet. His skill level increased, and he gained a new skill. The Supreme Recluse says it's amazing, and the new skill is an alternate dimension used to store items. The protagonist realizes this time it's storage and opens it. He picks up the dumbbell, and the system asks if he wants to store the item. The boy replies yes. The dumbbell is stored. The system notifies that it has been stored and asks if he wants to summon the item. The Supreme Recluse replies yes. The item is summoned. The protagonist says this is great and that he can summon items from storage to anywhere he wants. In that moment, a strong light flashes. The boy opens the storage and, with eyes closed and hand extended, begins to say to summon dumbbells. Several dumbbells are summoned and launched toward the goblins, and the system notifies several times that a goblin was hunted, and a large amount of EXP was earned. 54,661 were deposited into his wallet, and asks if he wants to list additional items. The Supreme Recluse replies yes. He listed 10 items after the shop opened. He sold the dumbbell he used to defeat the goblin, as well as various supplies and daily necessity items. The protagonist notices that his balance is now 2,178,805 won and wonders what that means. Did he lose a won? He thinks it's no big deal if it's to maintain dignity. He looks to the side and thinks the electric, gas, and water bills are probably the fridge's fault. That's troublesome, and goblins are damn annoying. After hunting the goblins by dropping dumbbells on them, they ran off and abandoned their former home. Since then, he's only managed to eliminate 2, and he wonders if there's another creature he wants to hunt. The boy looks around and sees no one, thinking he needs to find another method. The Supreme Recluse keeps looking and wonders if he'll be lucky enough for another stupid calican to pass by. He widens his eyes when he sees a bird approaching. It's a calican. The protagonist thinks that God hasn't abandoned him, so he runs, ties a mirror to the item he grabbed, goes to the window, and tries to lure it with the shining mirror. The bird looks to the side, notices him, and rushes toward him, making a noise. The boy smiles and thinks it worked. The beast stops in front of his window. The Supreme Recluse thinks that at this rate, it's a guaranteed success, and he'll definitely level up if he eliminates this thing. Then, the pressure in the air starts to intensify. The wind grows strong. The protagonist is confused until he no longer sees the beast in front of him, and when he looks up, the bird is there. The beast suddenly appears and opens its huge mouth with lethal intent. The bird closes its beak, and the system notifies that an unauthorized entity is trying to enter, but the shield is blocking it. The boy, scared, wonders if it really won't get in. He opens the shop and thinks he has to do something. The shop opens, and the Supreme Recluse observes that, from what he's seen so far, the loot calculation only happens if the body is nearby. His goblin hunts weren't always successful. Some survivors carried off the bodies of their fallen allies, and those weren't counted as loot. In other words, if the distance exceeds a certain limit, the loot isn't calculated, and he can't let that happen. He wonders if there's a way to eliminate it once and for all. Then, the protagonist notices canola oil and buys 10 bottles of it. The system asks if he wants to purchase the items, and the boy says yes. The oils are summoned. He grabs them all, also grabs a pan, starts pouring the oil into it, and then turns on the stove. The Supreme Recluse wraps a ribbon around a wooden stick and places it in the oil. The protagonist picks up the pan, opens the shop, and the system asks if he wants to list this item. The boy says yes. He begins pouring the oil and the boiling canola oil gets listed. The boy grabs a lighter and lights the ribbon-wrapped paper on the stick, forming big flames. The Supreme Recluse goes to the window with the torch and summons the canola oil. The oil is summoned onto the bird. The protagonist looks and approaches the beast with the torch. Flames spread across the bird's body. The boy thinks it worked. The fire keeps spreading across the beast's body, and it falls to the ground. The Supreme Recluse keeps watching. The bird lets out a loud noise until it is finished off. The system notifies that he successfully defeated a Calican and earned a massive amount of EXP. His skill level increased and he obtained a new skill. Loot nearby met the requirements. Loot calculation was completed. 9,347,487 won were deposited into the Supreme Recluse's wallet. The protagonist asks about 9 million and whether that's too much. Notifications arrive saying the requirements were met. The house's territory expansion has begun. The boy starts to notice something strange and asks what's going on. He looks to the side and begins to see odd things. The Supreme Recluse puts his hands over his eyes, thinking it's a problem with his vision, but it stays the same. Then he sees people gathered around a table. The protagonist wonders about the people, and if they're neighbors from the next building. He covers his eyes again, mana spreading around his body, and asks what that was. The system displays Choi Hyungjun, husband, 30 years old, Park Hyewon, wife, 30 years old, Choi Nayeon, first daughter, 6 years old, Choi Seoyeon, second daughter, 3 years old, and it has identified beings who meet the requirements to become citizens, asking if he wishes to grant them citizenship. The boy walks over and asks what happens if he doesn't grant citizenship. The system notifies that beings who do not receive citizenship will be expelled from the house, and asks if he's sure he doesn't want to grant them citizenship. The Supreme Recluse thinks that if he doesn't grant them citizenship, they'll be exposed to monster threats, so he says to grant citizenship to all four. Notifications arrive confirming they will receive citizenship. The protagonist thinks this is great, and that maybe he unlocked other skills related to citizenship too. Time to check. The system shows Supreme Eyes, and nothing within the house can escape these eyes. The boy wonders if there's anything related to the citizens. More notifications arrive from the ruler's declaration. No one may enter the house without the ruler's permission. The Supreme Recluse says, there it is. Choi has a trust level of 24, Park 18, Nayeon 33, and Soyeon 42. Current population, 4/600ths. The protagonist asks about 600 people and whether that's too many. The system shows Choi's data, no awakened ability, EXP and money distribution rate at 0%, with options to assign a mission or expel. The boy examines the EXP and money distribution rate and thinks it's about the EXP and money they'll share with him, and that he can even control how much he wants. He wonders if this is how he'll grow stronger, and if he can give him a mission. The system displays the option to assign a mission, including the mission description, time limit, reward, and penalty for failure. The Supreme Recluse says he can fill in the mission details himself, in this case. The mission description is to hunt a goblin, time limit is 168 hours, the reward is a small amount of EXP, and the penalty for failure is none. It asks if he wants to assign the mission. The protagonist notices there's a basic reward and wonders how far he can go with the failure penalty, then decides to edit the failure and completion penalties. The system updates with the penalty and asks again if he wants to assign the mission. The boy replies no, and notifications arrive that the request was cancelled. The Supreme Recluse thinks that if he wants, he can eliminate his citizens at any moment. That's his power. He wonders what he should do now. He activates the Supreme Eyes, feeling that strange sensation again and seeing the family next door. Park asks her husband what they're going to do now. Choi replies that he needs to go out and at least get some water, and wants her to stay there with the children and wait. His wife says he can't do that because it's too dangerous. Hyung replies that he knows, but there's no other choice. Hyewon asks if there's even anywhere left that has water. Choi says he wants to try going to the nearby convenience store. It's a big place, so there should be something there. The second daughter says she's thirsty. Hyung becomes distressed, not knowing what to do, and asks if his wife trusts him. He says he'll bring something back and for her to wait for him. Hyewon just lowers her head. The protagonist deactivates the Supreme Eyes and thinks the situation is much worse than he thought. He opens the shop and sees the item list, thinking it would be nice if he had the capacity to store more things. The boy opens the skill window. The system shows he can buy items listed in the shop at their original prices, has 3 points, and his current abilities. Dignity Preservation restores half the house's functions. Storage Levers 1, an alternate dimension where he can store items. The Supreme Recluse gets excited that he has points. The system asks if he wants to level up the Supreme Recluse's shop skill. The protagonist says yes. More notifications appear saying the shop is now level 2, the number of listable items has increased to 20, and a 10% discount has been applied to all item prices. The boy says this is great and thinks he has 2 points left. He decides it's better to invest more in the shop and in dignity preservation, and that he might start finding more citizens now. The system shows the number of listable items is now 40, and it has a new item restoration function. The Supreme Recluse thinks that this function can restore old items and make them new again. It's great and worth leveling the shop to 3. He opens the shop. The system confirms he can buy items at their original prices. The protagonist buys Samdai water and Cheju tangerines, and decides to level up his other abilities too. The system asks if he wants to level up the dignity preservation ability. He says yes, and thinks that if he provides electricity and water to his neighbor, he can ask for many things in return. The system notifies that dignity preservation is now level 2, and that he can now register vassals. The boy asks about vassals and what that means. Later, Choi has a bag on his back ready to leave. His wife calls him. Young says he'll return and asks her to protect the house while he's gone, and asks if she's okay. The first daughter asks if he's really leaving. Choi puts his hand on her head and says yes. He'll get food and water, and for them to listen to their mom while he's gone. The first daughter starts crying and says there are monsters outside. She remembers when she was playing with her sister in the playground and monsters came toward them. They ran and their parents picked them up and fled. Hyung takes a deep breath and both daughters cry a lot. Park tells them to stop crying and that everything will be okay. Choi thinks this might be the last time he sees them. He bites his lip, holding back his tears. Then someone knocks on the door. They get scared and step back, standing still and staring at the door. A voice says, "Excuse me," and asks to open the door. Hyung, frightened, wonders if it's a person or maybe a monster. It's very dangerous. The voice asks if anyone is there. They stay silent. Sounds are heard and then everything goes quiet. Choi asks if it went away. He keeps staring at the door until it opens. Hyung's eyes widen and he runs toward his family to protect them. His family starts screaming in desperation, and Choi says not to hurt his family. Someone says, "Excuse me." They open their eyes, confused, and it's the protagonist holding a bag. Hyung asks who he is. The Supreme Recluse, with shopping bags in hand, says he's Kim Jae-hyun, lives next door, and brought some water and tangerines. He asks if they can talk after they've had something to eat and drink. Choi calms down, looks at his family and thinks, water and food, there's no reason to refuse. This person might actually be able to help them, and says he can come in. The children are still a little scared. The protagonist wonders if he shocked them too much. He notices blackout curtains and thinks that's smart since it really reduces the chance of being attacked by monsters, and decides to turn on a bit of light first. The Supreme Recluse thinks, light, and Choi says the lights came back on. Kim says, to start, he'll give some water to his daughters. Hyung thanks him and hands the bottles to his daughters. They drink immediately. The second daughter coughs and her mother asks if she's okay. Jae-hyun looks over and asks if she likes tangerines. He gives her a tangerine and the second daughter thanks him. Park says she'll peel it for her, and after peeling, hands it to the child. The second daughter eats it and gets really excited. Hyewon asks if it's tasty. The second daughter says yes. The first daughter says she wants some too. She eats as well. Then the system notifies that all 4 had their trust increased, and loyalty has been unlocked. Choi Seo-yeon has met the requirements to be registered as a vassal, and her profile appears, asking if he wants to assign her a mission. The protagonist thinks she met the requirements to be registered as a vassal, but she's too young. Unlike citizens, only 10 vassals can be registered, and they need to be at least at her parents' level to actually carry out orders. But her trust is only at 31, so he needs to gain more of their trust first. Choi calls out to him and thanks him, saying he doesn't know how to repay such kindness. The Supreme Recluse says in that case, it's better to talk in the hallway. Hyung agrees. Later, in the hallway, the two go to there. Jae-hyun asks if he received citizenship. Choi replies that this notification window appeared and his whole family received it about 30 minutes ago. Kim asks if anything unusual happened. Hyung replies yes, they couldn't move the bodies for a while and wonders if they were temporarily frozen until receiving citizenship. The protagonist says his name and tells him he'll help bring back the life he had before all of this. Choi is surprised. The Supreme Recluse says he can guarantee that monsters won't invade the house. Hyung asks if that's really possible. Kim says yes. Choi closes and reopens his eyes, saying it won't be for free, and asks what he needs to do. Jae-hyun says he could die doing this, and asks if he's still willing to try. Hyung stays quiet for a moment, then replies that he absolutely will. Even before this, he was already risking his life going out for food and water. The protagonist says he saw a golf club just now, and asks how much that cost. Choi asks why and guesses it was around 400,000 to 500,000 won. The Supreme Recluse thinks that's too expensive to list in the shop and that he needs to save money for the future. Hyung asks why he brought it up. Kim says it's nothing and asks if he remembers the day the monsters appeared. Choi replies yes. It was a weekend and it was truly horrible. Jae-hyun says he thinks those who stayed home that day were the ones who survived. He believes a single goblin isn't very strong. Their levels are even lower than an adult man's. A goblin's real strength lies in moving in groups, but that also applies to humans, and he needs to grow his army first. He calls out to Choi and says that from now on he wants him to search for survivors together with him. Later, still in the building, the system notifies that Choi's trust level has increased. The protagonist, lying on the couch, says it went up again. The system shows the citizens' trust levels. The supreme recluse looks and thinks that eventually he'll find his family as he continues accepting people bit by bit. Then he hears noises and goes to the window. Looking down, he sees people surrounded by monsters and thinks it'll be hard to help them. The creatures try to attack, but one of the people throws a ball, hitting a monster in the face and knocking it to the ground. Kim looks surprised and asks what that was. Another warrior aims his bow and shoots an arrow into the monster's head. The hunter, holding a staff, leaps and strikes a goblin directly. The others flee and the warriors stop attacking. One of the female warriors looks to the side, aims her bow and notices something shining. Then she looks up and sees Jae-hyun. The warrior stares at him and the protagonist says it's over there. Then he looks to the side and notices that Choi is there. The supreme recluse opens the door and tells him to come in. Hyung, holding a box, thanks him and steps forward, but a barrier stops him. The system notifies that he is not qualified and cannot enter the house. Choi asks what not qualified means. Kim observes and wonders if no one can enter his house. Maybe only those registered as his vassals are allowed in. Hyung hands over the box, saying he brought everything in it that could be used as a weapon. Jae-hyun thanks him and opens the box, finding some items. He opens the shop and buys 5 bottles of water and 5 packs of ramyeon. Choi is surprised to see this, and the protagonist asks if he could go to the first floor and leave them at the entrance. Hyung asks about the first floor and whether it's not too dangerous. The supreme recluse replies that it's fine. After observing for a while, he noticed the goblins are only active during the day and thinks he needs to bring those people outside to his side. They'll have no choice but to seek him out once they realize he has food. And he says he has a plan in mind and asks Hyung to take it. Choi asks if he really has to drop it off on the first floor and then come back. Kim says yes. Hyung replies that he understands and says, "See you soon." Jae-hyun thanks him and thinks he needed to do something good for a guy like him, then opens the mission window. The system shows the mission. Take 5 bottles of water and 5 packs of ramyeon to the first floor and return. Time limit, 24 hours. Reward, a small amount of EXP. Penalty, none. Choi looks surprised. The protagonist says that if he does it, he'll earn things like EXP. Hyung asks if it's like leveling up in a game. The supreme recluse says yes, and for the record, he's level 9 now. When he levels up, he'll get great rewards too, and says he's counting on him. Choi says, "Got it." On the stairs, Hyung observes as he descends past the 20th and 19th floors, eventually reaching the first. Carrying the box, Choi feels relieved and says he just needs to drop it off. Then he looks ahead and sees people, remembers monsters, and thinks he needs to run away. But Hyung trips and falls, dropping the box. He doesn't get up and yells at himself to move. He looks to the side, terrified, closes his eyes, and someone calls out to him. Hyung is confused. It's the warriors, asking if he's okay. The system notifies that someone without permission is trying to enter. The protagonist watches, confused, and decides to check. He activates his supreme eyes and sees the warriors along with Choi. The warrior says this is the building where someone threw a pack of ramyeon. Her companion asks if that means this place has food. The hunter replies that it probably does. The supreme recluse realizes these are the people from earlier. The system notifies that beings who meet the requirements for citizenship are approaching and asks if he'd like to offer it to them. Kim realizes this is a citizenship proposal and thinks that, during territory expansion, he could grant forced citizenship to anyone inside it. He wonders if outsiders are given a choice, and if so, they could refuse his offer too. He's unsure what to do and feels confused. He looks to the side and notices something, then says he'll take a look. Jae-hyun moves closer to the screen and it's Choi asking if he's there. The protagonist says yes and asks him to wait a moment. The system notifies that Hyung is in the middle of a mission and asks if he wants to edit it. The supreme recluse says yes and edits the mission. Now it's to serve a meal to 6 guests. More notifications appear confirming the mission has been updated. Choi asks what that is. Kim replies that it's a new mission and to tell them he'll offer food first. He has a plan. Hyung says okay. He turns to the warriors and tells them. Choi says they'll agree to it for now. Jae-hyun thanks him and tells the system to propose citizenship to all 6. The system notifies that citizenship has been proposed to Dongjeon, Kang Deok-soo, Kim Ga-young, Yoo Hyerin, Kim Gaeon, and Moon Byung-go. All 6 have been granted access to the 30th floor. The total number of citizens is now 10. EXP and money gain for citizens has increased by 10%. The protagonist thinks, EXP and money bonuses? Who would have thought they'd get such good bonuses just from going out and hunting monsters? He'll gladly accept it. The system notifies current population 10/600ths. The Supreme Recluse says that this level 23 must be as strong as the Calican he defeated earlier. Dongjon is level 23, trust level 19, awakened ability, baseball throw. The system also shows EXP and money distribution rates. It states that baseball throw, rank D, consumes energy to triple the power of the throw. Kim says, as expected, he's a metahuman and thinks that depending on who throws the baseball, it can become a weapon. And if the ability multiplies its power by 3, it's perfect for taking down monsters. As for his trust level, that can be increased gradually. Jaehyun says to set the EXP distribution rate for all 6 to 70%. The system notifies that the configuration has been completed. The protagonist says it's done and thinks now he just needs to assign them missions to hunt monsters and can sit back and gain EXP and money. It's like playing in auto mode. And of course, he still needs to get to know them at the right time because they might be the key to reuniting with his family. The system notifies that Dongjon's trust level has increased. The Supreme Recluse is surprised, and the system also notifies that Ga-young and Yu Hyeran's trust levels have increased. Kim wonders what's going on. Meanwhile, Choi tells the warriors to come in. They thank him. Park asks what's going on. Hyung says he'll explain later and asks if she can prepare some food. Haifun asks if it's now and says she'll have to make everything from scratch. Choi says he'll help and believes Jaehyun has a plan. Park lowers her head thoughtfully and says she understands, asking them to wait a moment. They say it's fine and thank her. One of the warriors observes and asks what kind of person Kim is. Hyung replies that honestly he's not really sure either. The warrior asks if he doesn't know. Choi replies that all he knows is that he's his neighbor. The warrior thinks, he's his neighbor? Hyung says he's a very intriguing person, and all of this is thanks to his help. The warrior thinks that must mean he's a meta-human, and he must have an incredible ability to be able to provide electricity, food, and water. In the current world, that's a miracle skill. He's on another level. Choi says it'll take a while to prepare the food and asks if they'd like to take a bath. The female warriors are surprised and ask about a bath. Can they really? The warrior thinks he gets it. If there's electricity, most facilities can be used. Hyung replies yes, and that there's hot water too. The two stay surprised, and Choi says that's also part of Jaehyun's ability. There's one bathroom in the living room and another in the main bedroom, so they can bathe at the same time. They thank him and say it's amazing. The hunter with glasses asks if they think that man is also a meta-human. The warrior replies probably, and that his ability must be way more powerful than theirs. His partner next to him says not to be discouraged and that all they need to do is give him a good beating. The hunter calls him a lunatic and asks what the hell he's talking about, saying they should be trying to impress him instead. The guy asks if that's so. The hunter says he's begging him to do nothing and just stay quiet. The guy laughs and says it's fine. The hunter says that, anyway, the goal is to get as much food as possible, so they'll try not to mess things up and stay sharp, and asks if that's understood. The warriors respond affirmatively, though one of them remains silent. The hunter notices, taps his shoulder, and calls him Byung-ho. He apologizes, saying he wasn't paying attention. The leader apologizes too, saying it's all his fault. Byung-ho replies no, he didn't do anything wrong. The hunter says he really is sorry, if only he hadn't invited them to that party at his house. Byung-ho says it's fine. He chose to go. The leader says they'll get food here and go together to his grandmother's house. Byung-ho thanks him, lowers his head, closes his eyes, and thinks it's already too late. The chances she's still alive are slim. The hunter says it's close, and they should be able to reach it if they work together, so just hang in there a little longer. Byung-ho says he understands. Then they notice something. The door opens, and someone appears. The hunter asks who it is. The protagonist approaches with bags, and they feel something in that moment. The Supreme Recluse says he's going to help everyone. They think maybe this person can save them from this pit of despair. Later, they sit around a table. Park apologizes, saying the space is a little cramped. The leader says it's okay. They came uninvited after all. Choi approaches with a tray and says the food is coming. He sets it on the table. Hyun says she's not sure if what they prepared will suit their taste. She places the food on the table. They start picking it up. The warrior eats and says, it's wonderful, a beautiful feast. Park says it's thanks to the ingredients the neighbor gave them. Otherwise, she would have only served rice and tangerines. The system notifies that Hyun's trust is now at 50. The Supreme Recluse thinks, imagine her trust reaching 50 before even her husband's. They thank them for the food and start eating, clearly excited. The warrior says the tamagoyaki is amazing. Her partner asks if it's the sweet kind served in Japanese restaurants. Park replies yes and tells them to enjoy. The second daughter comes over and calls her, saying she wants tamagoyaki too. Hyewon puts her hand on her head and says she'll make more for her after the guests finish eating. The child's eyes fill with tears. The warrior asks if she wants to eat this tamagoyaki with her. Without thinking twice, the second daughter runs quickly to her and sits in her lap, saying yes. The warrior picks up the tamagoyaki and tells her to open her mouth. The child opens wide and eats it. The protagonist says to sit and eat together because there's enough food for everyone. The two look at each other and say it's fine, they'll join in. They sit and eat as well. The Supreme Recluse thinks it's been a long time since he had a meal like this. He remembers his mother and thinks he hopes everyone is safe. Later, still in the same place, the food runs out. The second daughter approaches and says she's sleepy. Park picks her up and says it's time for bed. Kim watches them leave and says they should finish the conversation from earlier. He asks why they couldn't get to Byung-ho's grandmother's house even though it's so close. The leader replies it's because of the goblins. Jae-hyun asks about goblins. The hunter says yes. It seems the building's underground parking lot is a great place for them to hide, so the goblins made it their base. The protagonist repeats, underground parking lot. The leader says they estimate there are at least a few thousand goblins in that place. The Supreme Recluse thinks his ability only works up to the 30th floor, so that's why the goblins can get into the building through the basement. The leader says all building entrances are connected to the parking lot and they didn't dare to go back down there. Kim says from what he remembers, there are alternative routes. The leader says their original goal was to escape using one of those alternate paths, but there was a monster even more dangerous than the goblins. Jae-hyun asks about a monster more dangerous than goblins. The leader says it looked like a wolf or a bear, and the only reason they managed to flee was because that beast was fighting a group of goblins at the time. The protagonist repeats, a wolf or bear. The leader says he's not sure. It was very dark. The Supreme Recluse says they can't avoid it forever. In the end, the leader agrees, saying they all have their limits. Kim asks, limits? The warrior replies that they've been using bows and throwing baseballs. Eventually, they'll run out of things to throw. Jae-hyun says he can solve that problem for them and asks to see the arrow and the baseball. They show him the bow and the ball. The system asks if he wants to list this item. The protagonist replies yes and looks surprised. The system says he must pay 1,530,000 won to list the composite bow in good condition and asks if he wants to proceed. The Supreme Recluse says yes and asks if they all know how to use bows, then says he's bought 5 sets of bows and arrows. And even if they don't know how to use them, now's the time to learn. They'll be using these from now on. The system shows the citizen management panel and that 3 trust levels have increased. Byung-ho widens his eyes, thinking it's unbelievable. If they work with him, they might be able to save his grandmother. The system notifies that his trust has increased. The leader says their monster hunting speed will definitely increase with this. The hunter with glasses says that if he can do that, they won't have to put themselves at risk retrieving arrows. Kim asks for a moment and says that before continuing, they need to drastically reduce the number of goblins. The leader says that's right and asks when the hunt begins. Jae-hyun replies the hunt will be tomorrow. They ask, tomorrow? The protagonist confirms, saying the sooner the better. The leader agrees, and the Supreme Recluse says they'll save Byung-ho's grandmother tomorrow. Moon gets excited and the leader asks how exactly they'll do it. Kim replies, they'll use a bait strategy. Everyone stays silent for a moment, and the warrior says, it could work. The glasses-wearing hunter says that'll only work if things go smoothly. The system notifies that Choi has completed his mission, and the mission reward, 30,000 won, has been delivered. Jae-hyun watches and wonders if money is really necessary and thinks that if he has money, he might be able to level up his citizens. Unless it's truly necessary, he won't use it for now. The system notifies that Hyung's trust has increased, reaching 50, loyalty has been unlocked, and now surpasses 30, meeting all the requirements to be registered as a vassal. The protagonist registers him. Choi starts to feel something and asks what just happened. The system notifies that the first vassal has been successfully registered and received a vassal ability as a reward. Vassal Summon can summon the vassal to the house, but can only summon again 2 hours after the first summon. Title of First Servant, Trust 51, Loyalty 62, Awakened Ability, Gorilla Strength. He obtained strength comparable to that of a gorilla. First Aid, EXP and gold earned by the vassal from hunts will be doubled. Supreme Eyes can be used to summon the vassal within 5 meters of the house. The Supreme Recluse thinks, wait, and wonders what this plus button is. The system asks if he would like to use 1 million won to level up the vassal. Kim wonders about spending 1 million won. Park asks if something's wrong. Jae-hyun replies it's nothing and asks how Hyung is feeling. Hyung says he feels like power is overflowing from him and asks if Jae-hyun was the one who did this to him. The protagonist says yes. Choi says he feels 10 years younger. The Supreme Recluse smiles and says he'd like him to take part in the mission as well. Citizens receive 10% extra EXP and vassals earn double. His earnings will be astronomical. Kim also tells him to eliminate as many monsters as possible. Hyung says he understands. Jae-hyun says he's counting on him. On the first floor, the warriors walk alongside Choi. The hunter asks if they really need to check the first floor, saying all the windows are broken and the place is in terrible shape. Dong-jeon says they have to check it anyway, and asks if he didn't hear what Kim said, saying they're acting as a rescue team. This is the first mission assigned by Jae-hyun. Rescue all the survivors in the building and bring them to the 30th floor. The leader says the key part of this mission is to lure a large number of goblins into the building and wipe them out, and for that they need to find as many survivors as possible, and asks if they understand that. The hunter replies that he gets it and understands. Dongjin says great, and they'll start with Unit 10. They don't know where goblins might show up, so they need to stay alert. They keep moving with blood splattered everywhere until they stop, paralyzed and frightened by the sight of several dead bodies on the ground. The leader closes his eyes and says to keep moving. The hunter grabs his bat and breaks a window. Dongjeon, covering his eyes, says there's nothing on the first floor and it's better to move on to the second. They head to the second floor and also find many dead people. They look on uncomfortably and the leader says to head to the third floor. They go up, nothing there. Dongjeon knocks on a door asking if anyone's there. The other hunters knock as well, asking the same, but there's no response. The leader bites his lip and says to go up. They move to the fourth floor. Dongjun knocks and says they're a rescue team. Someone opens the door and asks if they're really a rescue team. The leader says yes. The man asks if they could give him water. He's about to collapse. Dongjeon opens his bag and hands him a water bottle. The man asks if they're really rescuers and they're giving him this. The leader replies they're actually residents of this building, but they're here to rescue survivors. There's a safer place, so come with them. The man's eyes widen. He closes the door and then fully opens it, extending his hand and apologizing for being so distrustful. He says he's Hong Young-soo and will count on them. Dongjeon introduces himself too and says he hopes they get along. He tells the two girls to take them to the 30th floor and then come back. They say they understand. Hong asks about the 30th floor and if they're not leaving the building. The boy calls him dad and says he now feels like he'll survive, asking if he didn't say people would come for them, and that there's probably a helicopter at the top. Hierin says that's not it, but if they go upstairs, they can eat and take a hot shower. The girl asks about a shower. Is she serious? The warrior replies, yes, a hot shower. The girl immediately runs out and tells her father to stop stalling and go up at once. Young says it's fine. The system notifies that the protagonist now has 40 citizens. The EXP and gold the citizens earn have increased by 90%. The Supreme Recluse thinks that with 40 citizens, he'll let children and the elderly stay in Choi's apartment first and have the others live in the hallways. The leader says there are 40 people in total. That's everyone they could find. Kim asks if that's all. Dongjeon replies yes. They checked everything up to the 29th floor, and it seems several residents never left their homes from the start. Jae-hyun says good work and thinks Hyung's place is almost full. That should be enough. He activates his supreme eyes. Byung-go is holding a chair, Choi and the hunter have wires in hand, the two warriors as well, and the leader is carrying an item with his partner. The protagonist deactivates the supreme eyes and says they're ready, so it's time to start phase 2 of the goblin hunt. In the corridor, Dong-jeon calls for attention and says he'll begin the briefing. The objective is to draw out every goblin hiding in the basement, starting with B1. They'll split into 2 teams, lure the ones on B1 and wipe them out. After that, they'll finish the rest on B2. The glasses-wearing hunter asks what if there are far more goblins than expected? Wouldn't they get trapped and cut off on the first floor? And what if something happens while they're hauling goblin bodies? The female warrior tells him to relax. She'll wipe them all out herself. The leader says unlike last time they have plenty of arrows now, so it'll be fine. The glasses hunter says okay if they're that confident, when they suddenly hear a noise, turn, and see goblins. Hierin draws her bow, fires, and downs 2. The warrior charges with his bat and takes a head off in a single swing. All 3 goblins are eliminated. The glasses hunter asks why he brought a bow if he was going to use a bat and whether he hadn't just said he needed a bow. The warrior admits that's true. The female warrior points out the bodies are disappearing. Byung-ko wonders if that's also Jae-hyun's ability. The leader orders them down to B1. Moon thinks he knew Jae-hyun would have a solution, and 3 citizens' trust rises. Elsewhere, the protagonist opens a bottle of water, thinking this came at a good time. Even without meaning to, he ended up caring for them. The system notifies Byung-go has reached 50 trust, loyalty unlocked, and over 30, meeting all requirements to be registered as a vassal. The Supreme Recluse notes it took only a few hours and thinks the more vassals he gains, the faster he'll grow. He checks Moon's stats, loyalty 88, not bad, so he confirms the registration. In B1, the warriors fight goblins until Byung-go feels something. His partner asks what's wrong. The goblins cover their faces from a strong flash of light, and even those in the dark can now see. The leader says he doesn't know what's happening, but they should ignore it and run. They all dash forward, striking as they go, dropping goblins. Yu dashes and attacks, but more goblins keep coming, a whole herd. Moon runs, saying there are too many. Dongjian says he didn't expect to draw this many. The hunter says it looks like even the B2 goblins came up. Head for the emergency exit. The door is shut, they yank it open and try to close it, but a goblin wedges its hand in. They push hard as more goblins force it open, screeching. The warriors struggle and shout to get to the first floor fast. They're shoved back. The system notifies Choi's gorilla strength activates. He slams the door shut. Everyone stares, stunned. Hyung braces the door, thinking he must stop them, no matter what. The leader says it's safe now. Choi agrees and starts up the stairs but stumbles. Goblins burst through, chasing him. Hyung tells the others to go without him. Dongjun curses. The hunter darts back, kills the goblin after Choi, and calls to him. Hyung crawls, but another goblin grabs his leg. The hunter freezes, can't see Choi anymore. Goblins charge but are struck down by the warriors who yell for their comrade. Deoksu runs while the others fight, urging him to move. The hunter races up the stairs with monsters at his heels. In the building at dusk, a creature bites a goblin with sharp teeth and thinks it needs more. Hearing noise, it turns, intent on killing them all. Meanwhile, Choi runs, collapses,
The protagonist thinks
saying he was nearly
watching
killed.
the situation
Adjusting his glasses, he
continuously through
sees
the
something.
supreme eyes.
Kim. The protagonist thinks he kept watching the situation continuously through the supreme eyes, in case something happened, and luckily the vassal summoning skill worked. Choi has an injured leg and he asks when he got there. The supreme recluse asks if he's okay. Hyung replies that he's fine and that such an injury is something he can recover from quickly. Kim thinks it's better to list some medical supplies too and tells him to wait there for a moment. Jaehyun grabs a medical box and thinks that medical supplies are absolutely necessary in situations like this, and it reminds him of when he was younger. He checks the items he has and realizes there are only 40 slots, and he can't list all of them. Then the protagonist notices something and picks up an object. The system notifies about the first aid kit used, 77,331 recovery. The Supreme Recluse goes outside again, now with the kit, and asks to show where he's hurt. Choi lifts his pants and says he's really fine. Kim says he'll start by disinfecting the wound. He cleans the wound with cotton. Hyung groans a bit in pain. The system notifies that the citizens' trust and loyalty have increased. Choi thanks him. Jaehyun wonders if the others are doing well and tells him to rest there a bit as he has another matter to handle. He thinks that now he's going to check the lower floors. The protagonist activates the Supreme Eye and notices someone moving on the first floor. It's the warrior with her bow, eliminating enemies. The leader tells Deoksu to run. He starts running while the warriors eliminate the monsters. Deoksu keeps running until a goblin grabs him. Byungho notices and attacks the beast without hesitation. He moves quickly and attacks the other goblins. His friends are surprised and ask if he was always that good at fighting. The protagonist thinks it's great and that they're doing well and looks at Moon's data. The awakened ability is Teleport, which uses mental power to move across distances, and can only be used in areas visible to the user. The more people designated for teleportation and the greater the distance, the more mental power is used. The Supreme Recluse thinks it was a great decision to register him as a vassal. Meanwhile, the warriors keep attacking the monsters and the leader asks if his partner left the extension ready. Gaeon replies, yes. Dongjeon asks about the water tank and the warrior says, it's ready there. The leader tells Byungho to enter now. Moon enters quickly. They place objects to block along with the tank. The water spreads over the goblins. Dongjeon signals Jeon to go now. Jeon presses the extension to activate it. Lightning starts to be released through the wires thrown down the stairs, and the goblins begin to be electrocuted. The system notifies that a goblin was hunted multiple times, and a large amount of EXP was gained. A total of 334,464 won was deposited into the Supreme Recluse's wallet. The skill level increased, and a new skill was acquired. The protagonist notices something. An energy begins to be released around him, growing larger, spreading throughout the entire building and striking the goblins. The system notifies that hostile beings have been detected, and their elimination is being initiated. The monsters begin to disappear, and various notifications arrive that they were hunted. Elsewhere, goblins walk until they stop and look back, encountering a giant, frightening creature. The creature opens its enormous mouth and bites them, eliminating them and going after the others, using its sharp claw and quickly defeating them. The goblins panic upon seeing their partners defeated and begin to make a sound but are also eliminated. One of the goblins starts biting the creature and the others still alive also begin to bite. They all bite the creature and the giant bear starts screaming in pain while being bitten until suddenly the goblins are eliminated with a single strike. The creature is confused. The system notifies that it received citizenship. The bear begins to feel something strange, moves its body and transforms into a woman, returning to her normal form and falling to the ground. Kim continues using his supreme eye and notices the eliminated goblins and the woman lying on the ground wondering who she is. The system shows her name is Yeonju, and her awakened ability is Bear Human, which transforms the user into a beast, maximizing all physical and regenerative abilities. Jaehyun wonders if she's level 33 and still has an A rank ability. And there's more, the system notifies that Dongjeon reached 50 trust and so did Hiren, and loyalty was unlocked. Kang surpassed 30 loyalty and he met all the requirements to be registered as a vassal. The protagonist thinks this is amazing. With his eyes closed, he registers Kang as a vassal. The system shows Deoksu's data and his awakened ability, Iron Knight. The user can summon a halberd and iron armor that covers the entire body. The Supreme Recluse thinks that the vassal's level depends on the awakened ability. Choi, who has Gorilla Strength C, is level 20. Kang, who has Iron Knight B, is level 25. Lastly, Moon, who has Teleport A, is level 30. Since the moment they were registered as vassals, their levels were decided based on the rank of their awakened abilities. He wonders if the ranks of the abilities are chosen randomly. Because if Byunggo received a rank A ability based on loyalty value, then Choi, who has a higher loyalty value, should have gotten a rank B ability, not rank C, since Kang received a rank B ability with a loyalty value of 31. It would be good to know what factors contribute to the appearance of a higher ranked ability. This information would be crucial, as only 10 vassals can be registered, so it would be more advantageous to register someone who can obtain a higher ranked ability. Not knowing what might happen when registering a metahuman as a vassal is a problem. The system notifies that the metahuman can now move freely between stairs, elevators, and corridors. Kim walks into the corridor and uses the Supreme Eyes again, encountering the woman still lying on the 30th floor. Jae-hyun calls for Choi. Hyung is in front of him waiting. This is the 30th floor, the doors are opening. The protagonist says he'd like him to bring the young lady from floor B2 there. Meanwhile, the warriors are holding wires, observing the eliminated goblins. Kang asks what that was and says a bunch of goblins suddenly came at them. Jaehyun says it's almost as if someone caused it. The leader thinks that considering how powerful that ability was, he's sure. Dongjeon bites his lip and remembers Choi saying that he's a very interesting person, and there's hot water too. The girls are surprised, and Hyung says that this is also part of Jae's abilities. Park says it's thanks to the ingredients Kim gave, otherwise they would have only served rice and tangerines. In real time, the leader thinks that this is his ability. Also, Byunggo used to be an introvert but suddenly changed after meeting Jae. His abilities should be feared. No matter what powers he may have, it all leads to the same conclusion. On the 82nd floor, Choi runs off to fetch the woman, and Dongjeon thinks that in this cursed world, they need to be chosen by him to survive. Some time ago, a child was playing with his toy car and was very excited. He looked to the side, seeing his mother there, and was very happy, until his mother's expression changed to fear as she saw goblins behind her son. She moved quickly, but the goblins were faster. Her eyes filled with tears as she saw her son get taken down, leaving only his toy car behind with plasma. In the current time, Yeon wakes up in a bed, startled. The protagonist is beside her. Ju stares at him, sits up in bed. The Supreme Recluse says it's a pleasure to meet her and says his name. Yeon asks if it was him. Kim doesn't quite understand and asks what she means. Ju asks if it was him who decapitated those goblins. Jaehyun's hand begins to tremble and he replies yes. Yeon looks at him and thinks his ability is very powerful, that he can wipe out a group of goblins in the blink of an eye. And maybe if it's him? She starts trembling, tears falling from her eyes, and wonders if it's possible. She talks about her son, asks him to save him, even if just for one day, even if it's just a single day with him, that he could help. The system notifies that her trust increased greatly. Ju cries a lot, saying she misses her son terribly. She keeps crying non-stop. The protagonist watches her and thinks she must have lost her son to the goblins and wonders if there's something he can do. The system notifies about granting a mission. Eliminate 1,000 goblins, no time limit, no penalty. The reward is the resurrection of her son. The Supreme Recluse thinks that if this is possible, more notifications arrive saying the mission cannot be granted, and Kim thinks he figured. Of course it can't. There's no way to bring back the eliminated. The system notifies that he doesn't have enough funds to provide the mission's reward, resurrection, and to try again once he has enough funds. Jae-hyun is shocked and asks if that means it's possible to resurrect someone as long as he has money. Later, still in the same place, Ju continues crying. The protagonist thinks he still doesn't know exactly how much is needed for the resurrection. He bites his lip and calls her. Yeon is still crying hard, and the Supreme Recluse says he thinks he might be able to help her. Bringing her son back to life might be possible, and he thinks that this means there's still hope. Ju asks if he's being serious and if he can really resurrect her son. Kim replies yes, but not right now, though it's definitely possible. Yeon says she'll do anything and asks what she needs to do. Jaehyun thinks there are two people in Dongjeon's group who have awakened abilities, Kong and Moon. If Ju, who is level 33, joins them too, they'll have a much easier time fighting most monsters. The best would be for all 7 of them to become his vassals. He tells her to get up now because he wants to introduce her to some people. Later, they go downstairs, and someone extends a hand and says, "It's a pleasure to meet her." It's the leader. He introduces himself, and Yeon does the same, asking if he's the one who hunts goblins by throwing a baseball, and the one next to him is the archer. The warrior asks if she knows them. Ju makes a hand gesture and asks if they don't recognize her, saying they met before. They stay confused. Yeon smiles and starts growing larger body hair, transforming into a bear. Heron looks surprised and says she's that beast they saw on the way. Ju says to be more exact, she's a she-bear, and actually she's helped them a few times already, and asks if they didn't notice. Dongjeon mentions that time and realizes the encounter wasn't a coincidence. Yeon says the enemies of goblins are her friends. The Supreme Recluse says it's good they all know each other now and that he has something to say. They will execute the plan to rescue Byungko's grandmother tomorrow morning. Now that the number of goblins has dropped drastically, they should be able to save her, and Choi won't participate this time because of his injuries, and he thinks Choi's bed was given to Yeon. He says the young lady will take part in tomorrow's mission in his place. Ju says she's counting on them. Kim says they'll see each other in the morning, and they all respond yes. Jaehyun calls for Moon and Kang and tells them to go to the hallway. They move to another location, and the protagonist asks if they know why he called only the 2 of them. They're confused and say they have no idea, asking if it has something to do with their powers. The Supreme Recluse replies that it's exactly that, and this time, both of them awakened. The ability Byungho gained was Teleport, and Deoksu's was Iron Knight. He thinks these abilities need to be tested before tomorrow's mission. To start, the system notifies that it's granting a group mission. Demonstrate awakened abilities. Time limit. 1 hour. Reward. Increase strength. Penalty for failure. Sleep outside. It asks if he wants to grant the mission. Kim thinks it's a group mission, and that'll work for now until someone calls him. It's Kong, asking if that means he's like their leader now. Jaehyun replies yes, exactly that. Deoksu gets excited and asks what kind of ability Iron Knight is. The protagonist replies he can summon iron armor and a halberd. Kong is about to say something when someone suddenly teleports next to him. He's shocked, and everyone falls silent. Moon teleports and gets excited seeing that it worked. He really likes the power. The system notifies that citizen Byungko's trust and loyalty increased. Moon thanks him. The Supreme Recluse tells him to wait and says it'll be very hard for him to reach his grandmother now. Byungko asks why. Kim answers that there's no guarantee he can control the ability properly yet, and that teleport he just did might have been pure luck. He thinks it would be a good idea to fully understand how far he can teleport and what kind of penalty he might receive by using the ability. Moon says he understands. Then they feel intense pressure. It's Kang in his armor. He's surprised and excited that it worked. The system notifies that Deoksu's trust and loyalty increased. Jaehyun calls Byungko and tells him to use teleport to go there. Moon watches and says he'll try. The system notifies the mission. Use teleport to reach the roof of building 113. Time limit. 3 minutes. Reward. Increased teleport proficiency, penalty for failure. Sleep outside. Kong says he can do it. Byungko begins releasing mana around him and teleports, landing on top of the building. He says he did it and waves to show he's up there. The system notifies that Moon completed the mission. The protagonist smiles. Byungko is still excited until he's about to fall to the ground. The 2 watching him look shocked, and the Supreme Recluse summons Vassal Moon, and he's brought back. Later, Byungko's lying down and Kim thinks he passed out. It looks like that drained a lot of his energy. Kong asks if his partner is okay. Jaehyun replies that fortunately it looks like he'll be fine after resting a bit and that this probably happened because he's still not used to the ability. Deoksu is relieved, and the protagonist says, speaking of which, he asks if he works out and grants him a mission to exercise using the armor. Do 100 push-ups and squats in 10 minutes. The reward is increased strength, and the penalty for failure is sleeping outside. Kang starts doing push-ups and squats and says he's finished and done. The system notifies that Deoksu completed the mission. The Supreme Recluse wonders if it's because he's good at sports, that he has such extraordinary stamina. Then a system message arrives saying it's analyzing. Kim doesn't understand and wonders what that is. Kong asks if it's over. Jaehyun says yes, it was a good job, and he can rest now, and thanks him. The system notifies that the evaluation is complete. Deoksu thanks him for the time. More notifications come in saying his strength increased a bit. The protagonist is confused and observes the aura around his arm, wondering if his strength increased. He smiles and thinks this changes everything. The next day in an alley in Busan, Dongjeon tells them to run. The warriors run, and several monsters chase after them. Kong grits his teeth as he looks back and sees the many goblins. He activates his ability, summoning his armor, and starts attacking and eliminating them with ease. The remaining goblins get furious and charge at him. Deoksu insults them and the goblins are hit by arrows. Kong is confused and looks to the side. It's Moon with his bow, who says not to worry about the ones that got past him. Deoksu keeps attacking and says he got it. The goblins watch and start running away. Kong calls after them until something steps in front of the beasts. It's the she-bear. They get terrified. The two warriors keep attacking. Yon also attacks them. The leader shouts to Byungo and says it's time to go see his grandmother. Moon runs off, says he understands, and thanks him. The system notifies that Ju completed the mission and is evaluating it. The protagonist watches, and more notifications arrive saying the evaluation is complete. 132,966 won were deposited into the Supreme Recluse's wallet. The Supreme Recluse asks about the money and says this is a different reward from before. He thinks he gained strength when Deoksu completed his mission and wonders if the extra reward is random. He thinks maybe the reward was higher because the mission's difficulty was higher. The system notifies that Moon completed his mission and has exhausted all mission attempts for the day. It's evaluating the mission completed by Byunko and the evaluation is complete. Kim thinks it's time to open the rewards. Notifications arrive saying he won the lottery and congratulate him. Jaehyun wonders about a prize and if skill points also show up there. The protagonist smiles and says it's not bad at all. Moon teleports, observes, sees a house in front of him, opens the door and runs inside calling for his grandma. His eyes widen when he sees her. Byungo approaches and calls out. His grandmother wakes up and asks if it's her grandson. Tears stream down Moon's face as he cries hard and hugs her, feeling relieved and apologizes, saying he took too long to get there. He thinks of Jaehyun and thanks him deeply. The system notifies that his trust increased and his loyalty reached 100, and he's now registered as a vassal. The number of available vassal slots has increased. The protagonist looks at the vassal management and is surprised, wondering if you can level up like that too. He says now it's time to see how much it costs to improve Byungo. The system notifies that he doesn't have enough money to evolve the vassal. 100,000 won are required to evolve Moon, and he should try again after gathering more money. The Supreme Recluse is shocked and asks if it's 100 million won. He apologizes to Byungo, thinking at least he'll give him missions every day. He widens his eyes upon hearing a noise in the elevator and wonders who it could be. Kim activates the Supreme Eyes and sees two people with a box, a girl and a boy, asking if someone is there. Park opens the door a bit confused and asks who they are. The girl introduces herself as Dabin and says the boy next to her is her younger brother Minho, and they live in apartment 1701. Hyewon asks what brings them there. Dabin says she needed help. Park asks about the help. Dabin says she knows it's strange and asks if she can take a shower there. Hyewon doesn't understand and asks about a shower. Dabin says yes. Park replies of course she can come in and use the shower. Dabin thanks her, and Minho asks where to put the box. Hyewon asks what it is. Dabin says it's canned food and some stuff she picked up. Park asks if she's serious. She opens the box and finds the canned goods, saying they didn't need to do that. Dabin says it's no problem. It's the least they can do since they're invading their home with such a strange request. Daban looks to the side and sees weapons, then asks if she can ask whether the bow and the baseball bat belong to the apartment's owner. Park replies that those don't belong to any resident there. They came from another building. The story is kind of confusing. Dabin says she understands. The protagonist thinks that for now, they don't seem to have bad intentions, and that he'll head over later to talk with them too. Maybe he can convince them to help rescue survivors from other buildings. The system notifies that a red tiger was hunted. A large amount of EXP was earned. 39,783,201 were deposited into his wallet, the skill level increased, and a new ability was acquired. The Supreme Recluse wonders what that was just now. He grumbles and notices the leader and his team are all injured. The she-bear and a tiger are lying on the ground. Kim asks what the hell is going on. He starts yelling, distressed. The system notifies that he has found people eligible for citizenship and asks if he wants to grant it. Jaehyun wonders if there are still people without citizenship and says, of course, he wants to grant it now. The system notifies that citizenship is granted and he now has 50 citizens. With the number of citizens reaching a milestone, everyone unlocked the skill Power of Trust. The protagonist asks about the power of trust and whether anyone is seriously injured. He then sees Moon carrying his grandmother on his back and Kang carrying Yeon, badly wounded. The Supreme Recluse thinks this is not good and wonders why it had to be Ju. Then they hear noises. It's more goblins, but they are taken down with a single blow. Ga-young asks if he hit that on the first try. Jiyeon replies that even he doesn't understand. Hyren suddenly feels her body lighter, and the leader says he does too, not even feeling out of breath. The system notifies that the power of trust increases all attributes by X% based on trust value. Kim observes and says that explains it. He thinks Dongjon and his group have trust above 50. So, if all attributes, stamina, strength, reflexes, increase by 50%, it's natural for them to become superpowered. Meanwhile, Moon smiles and says this must be Jae-hyun's power. The system notifies that Gae-young's loyalty surpassed 30, and she meets the requirements to be registered as a vassal. Hyeon's loyalty also surpassed 30, meeting the same requirement. Jae-hyun tells it to register both as vassals. Mana is emitted around the two of them. They are surprised and ask what's happening. Gae-young's ability is piercing, and Yu's is poison mist. Then goblins appear. The warrior aims her bow and fires, hitting all of them with a single shot. She's surprised and asks what that was and what's going on. The system notifies about piercing C, which consumes mental energy to fire a penetrating arrow. The protagonist says to assign a mission. The system says to use piercing to hunt 10 goblins within 10 minutes. The reward is increased piercing proficiency, and the penalty for failure is fatigue. The Supreme Recluse thinks that this ability is more complex. More notifications arrive explaining that poison mist consumes mental energy to create a deadly fog. Kim thinks the ability is good, but since poison mist is level B, if used wrong, it could harm the whole team. He decides to analyze that later. The system notifies that Gae-young completed the mission and hit the daily mission limit, evaluating her mission results. Jae-hyun says this time there wasn't anything new, and now he'll check the citizens on the lower floors. The protagonist activates the Supreme Eye and sees a young man walking with a water bottle, gathering water. The Supreme Recluse thinks that's good perception and wonders if he's collecting drinking water in advance. Kim continues observing and thinks that's why they didn't need to join Dongjun's group. They can gather food and water on their own. Then he notices a woman lying down and runs to her. The system shows her data. Her name is Da-jung, Trust 18, Awakened Ability, Healing, consumes mental energy to recover injuries. Jae-hyun realizes she's a healer. He walks up and slowly tries to open the door, realizing it's locked. The protagonist looks down and remembers the new skill he just obtained. The system shows the technique window, Invisible Hand of the Supreme Recluse. It can summon and control an invisible hand. The Supreme Recluse says that's useful. He breaks the lock, but it still prevents him from entering, so he summons a tool. Kim uses the tool and breaks the lock, managing to fully open the door. He runs to the healer and tries to wake her up, but realizes her condition is worse than he thought. He sees signs of dehydration and wonders if there's anything nearby that could help her. Jae-hyun looks ahead, sees a water bottle, and says it doesn't make sense, asking how that's possible. But then thinks no, right now the important thing is saving her. He opens the system and wonders if it's possible to do that. The system notifies that the mission was completed. Breathe once, with the reward of recovering from dehydration. Da-jung completed the mission and used 10 million won for it. The protagonist realizes it worked. The healer opens her eyes, and the Supreme Recluse asks if she's okay. Da-jung asks who he is. Kim says his name, and that he lives in the apartment above hers. The healer asks how he got there. Jae-hyun replies that she looked really bad, so he broke in and came inside. Tears start falling down Da-jung's face. She puts a hand over her face and cries a lot. The protagonist watches her, calls her, and apologizes, saying he really needs her help. One of his companions is badly hurt. The healer, still sitting, looks at him and wonders what he's talking about. If she can even help anyone. She thinks it's impossible and wonders if he wants her help treating someone, and how he knows she's a nurse. She thinks that by the way he's asking for help, he doesn't seem dangerous. She'll play along for now and see where it goes, then asks where she needs to go. The Supreme Recluse tells her to wait a moment. The system notifies that she received a mission, to use healing to treat Yeon's injuries. The time limit is 1 hour, the reward is increased healing proficiency, and there's no penalty for failure. Kim watches and tells her to take this for now and rest a little. He'll bring the injured person here. Da-jung is a bit confused. She throws the tangerines on the floor and says to wait a moment, then yells again to wait. She points at the system and asks what that is. Jae-hyun smiles and says he'll explain later. She's too weak now and needs to rest for now. The healer keeps looking at the tangerines, wondering if she's dreaming. Later, the protagonist walks down the hallway until he gets another system notification saying Da-jung's trust increased. The Supreme Recluse thinks she probably didn't trust him at first and that no one would trust someone who breaks into their home out of nowhere. It must be time. He walks to the window and widens his eyes as he sees a tiger chasing the warriors. Kim looks terrified as he sees the sharp teeth and claws and realizes it's a red tiger. Then, someone trips. It's Gae-young who falls to the ground. Her partner calls her. The warrior struggles to get up. Hyeon screams in fear. The tiger opens its huge mouth, about to swallow her, creating intense pressure until she's teleported. The tiger doesn't understand. Smoke moves, and Gae-young appears in another place, in the protagonist's home, coughing. He thinks that was close, but Fortunately, it bought the others some time. The system notifies that he discovered beings who meet the requirements for citizenship and asks if he wants to grant it. Then Moon is teleported there and tells him to take care of his grandma. The Supreme Recluse tells him to wait. Byungko tries to say something, but Kim stops him with just a look. Moon widens his eyes and says it's fine. Meanwhile, the tiger outside keeps running. Jaehyun uses the invisible hand and thinks he needs to eliminate that red tiger using another method. The tiger roars loudly. The leader looks back, moving quickly. He lifts his hand with the baseball and throws it. The tiger dodges and lets out an extremely loud sound. The warrior calls her partner. Dongjeon looks at the beast and thinks it's too late, telling everyone to run. The beast chases them non-stop, getting closer and closer with its giant sharp teeth. The leader grits his teeth as he sees it getting near, but the tiger is suddenly stopped by a terrifying aura that holds it still, unable to move. A rope chokes it. Dongjeon looks surprised. The warrior calls her partner again, then notices a system message and is shocked. The protagonist watches and thinks he doesn't need to be there personally. Now, with the warrior hunting, he earns 4 times the loot. Hirin aims her bow. The tiger growls. The warrior stares at it and shoots. The system notifies that the red tiger was hunted. A large amount of EXP was gained, 63,211,776 won were deposited into the Supreme Recluse's wallet. Citizen Moon's trust increased. The citizen's trust and loyalty increased. Citizen Hiren's trust increased. Her loyalty also increased. The citizen's loyalty surpassed 30 and met all requirements to be registered as a vassal. The Supreme Recluse says, "It's incredible. Dongjeon's vassal registration is complete." Meanwhile, the healer is using her healing ability on Yeon's wounds, and the injuries slowly begin to heal. Kim thinks they were very lucky to have just found Dajung and asks what happened and what's with that red tiger. The leader responds that he believes the house where Byungko's grandmother lived was within the red tiger's territory. They managed to take down one, but it seems there was another. Jaehyun thinks no wonder something felt off. And thinking about it, there were no goblins in that area. If goblins needed a nest, Byungko's grandmother wouldn't have been safe. They should be glad she was in the red tiger's territory. It was incredible luck. The system notifies that the results of Gyeong's mission are being evaluated. 73,312 won were used for the mission. The healer lets out a relieved breath and says she's done. The protagonist says it was a good job. Dajung replies that it was nothing and asks if she can go home now. Choi says to wait a moment. He knows it's not the time to say this, but asks if they're all going to keep gathering at his place. The Supreme Recluse looks at him and everyone there gets a little awkward. Kim says not to worry, he just needs to tell them what's going to happen next. Unit 2901 is currently vacant, and electricity and all basic needs will be provided, so they can live there from now on. He calls Dabin and says Units 2101 and 2102 are also vacant right now, and he'll provide electricity there too. He asks if she can inform the other survivors to use the shower and bathroom in those units. Dabin says she understands and will do that. Jaehyun says that if they want, one group can use one unit and the rest will share the other. Dabin asks if he's serious. The protagonist says he has a favor to ask. Dabin says to go ahead. The Supreme Recluse says he wants her to become a messenger between the other survivors and himself. Dabin asks about being a messenger. Kim replies yes, and to tell them that the team who kills 100 goblins the fastest will earn a vacant apartment with electricity, water, gas, and unlimited food. Furthermore, if the team accepts 10 survivors, those survivors will also enjoy the same benefits. That said, she should also mention that, depending on the floor where they live, these perks may take longer to be provided. Jaehyun watches them and thinks that from now on, only those who prove their value will receive what they need. The system notifies that a mission is available. Hunt goblins, time limit 168 hours, small EXP reward, penalty for failure. Forbidden from using shared facilities. It asks if he wants to grant the mission. Meanwhile, in another location, a boy is screaming while running from goblins chasing him. The boy cries, thinking it's just a little further to the door. But a goblin grabs him, and he falls to the ground, shouting, "Now!" 3 guys with spears say he did a good job. He really brought a bunch of them there. The guys start attacking the goblins with their spears. The beasts fall to the ground. Others are flung far away. The goblins scream loudly. One of them gets up and starts running. They notice some are escaping and say to strike quickly. One of them grins and asks if they want to see something cool. He gets into position and throws his spear, hitting the enemy directly, saying, "Beautiful, did you see that?" The other 2 say it was awesome. The redhead asks how many each took down. One replies 22, the other says 23. The redhead says they took down over 100 goblins between the 3 of them. They ask if he's serious. Had they really gotten that many already? They were thinking it would take forever to kill 100 goblins. The boy walks up and says he was told there would only be a maximum of 10 goblins. The redhead looks back and asks why he's complaining again. The boy asks if he really thought it looked like just 10 goblins. The redhead asks if the results weren't great, says they'll get a new house soon. The boy says he almost died because of him. The redhead puts a hand on his head and asks who came up with that hunting method. It was him. He also made the plan. The spears were crafted by the twins, and didn't he say he trusted the boy's ability to run? If he's that unhappy, he can leave the team. Says having him or not makes no difference anymore. The two others tell Seung-yeob to calm down. Seungmin also tried hard and was a great decoy. He ran really fast too. The redhead says he always annoys him and asks how he dares talk back like that. The blonde says he shouldn't have done that and tells him to apologize. Seungmin apologizes. Seung-yeob says to let it go and tells them to head to the 21st floor. It's time to claim their new house. On another floor, Dabin apologizes and says that the other team already claimed the reward. They're surprised, and the redhead asks if there's a team that killed 100 goblins before them. Dabin replies yes. Seung-yeob tells her to wait, to stop joking, and just give them the house. Dabin says it's not a joke. They're right there, the ones who eliminated 100 goblins first. The redhead looks, and it's Minho and two older men. Dabin asks how it went. Minho replies that they made a deal. In exchange for giving up the new house, his home and Ihos will receive electricity, food, and other supplies, and their daughters won't have to do any missions. Dabin asks if Jiho's daughters are underage and says they should already be exempt from missions. The two older men reply that their daughters are actually adults. They just look younger than they really are. Dabin asks if that's true. The older woman says her daughter is good with a bow like she is, but her husband worries too much about them. Minho agrees and adds they also promised to provide bows and arrows for the girls. Dabin asks about bows and arrows, and if they're going to keep hunting goblins. Minho replies yes. Jay asks them to clear the surrounding area of goblins, and those damn things keep coming no matter how many they kill. The redhead tells them to hold on and asks if they're giving out special treatment, saying they're the ones in charge, and asks if it's not unfair. Minho says he understands. It might seem unfair to them, so Jae-hyun asks that the second and third teams be sent to the 30th floor for their rewards. Dabin asks seriously if they heard that and tells them everything worked out for them. To head up to the 30th floor with their team, Jae-hyun will be waiting. On the 28th floor, Seung-yeob says that guy's name is Kim, and he looked younger than them. They ask if it wasn't hilarious how she spoke so respectfully about him. The two blonde guys ask if she thinks he's a god or what. They say a god is a stretch. At most, he's a cult leader, and they wonder if that kid is even right in the head. Seungmin says they're being protected by his abilities, so he's not sure if they even have the right to say that, and asks if everyone isn't just trying to get on his good side. The three glare at him. The redhead calls him a bastard. They arrive at the 30th floor and the doors are opening. Seung-yeob says they'll talk later. Someone approaches. It's the protagonist. He greets them. The four get nervous. The redhead extends his hand, introducing himself. They shake hands, and the supreme recluse says he saw how he and his team hunted, that they used the barrier well. It was very good. Seung-yeob asks how he knows that. Kim says he'll now provide electricity, water, and gas to units 1301 and 1502. The redhead asks if that's possible. Jae-hyun replies, of course. Seung-yeob asks how. The protagonist says that since they hunted 100 goblins, they qualified, and that he's not a cult leader, nor does he intend to become a god, and that he also has a request for them. Later, people come running. It's the redhead's team, fleeing from monsters. They keep running non-stop until someone says to throw it. Dongjin smiles and says with pleasure. He throws his weapon. His awakened ability is throw and thrust. The throw consumes mental energy to throw objects and increase attack power 5-fold. Thrust consumes mental energy and temporarily manifests sword aura when stabbing a target. Knight, a physical boost that scales based on loyalty status, and vassals gain 3 times more EXP and money from any hunted monster. They can develop as knights by allocating EXP to them. Lancer, current proficiency, 11%, an increase in attack power that scales with user proficiency. One of the orcs is struck and falls to the ground. Another monster approaches to attack, but someone is faster and strikes first. It's the warrior. The leader grabs his weapon from his back and throws it at the last one, taking it down. The system notifies that he hunted an orc, gained EXP, and 3,211,098 won were deposited into the Supreme Recluse's wallet. Group mission to hunt 100 orcs, complete. The residents look surprised. Dongjin smiles and they walk. The system notifies that an unauthorized individual is attempting to enter. Beings who meet citizenship requirements are approaching and asks if he wants to offer them citizenship. The protagonist realizes it's 3 people this time and says this will make 200 citizens. Propose citizenship. More notifications arrive that citizenship has been offered to Dongwoo, Satbyol, and Hyunsung. Now, with 200 citizens, a new skill has been unlocked, tax collection. can collect 10% of citizens' current balance as tax. This skill does not reduce their actual balances. Cooldown time is 30 days. The Supreme Recluse thinks that the tax collection skill returns a portion of the money citizens earn, but he can't decide how much to take. At this rate, he'll have to wait 10 months to collect the full amount. There isn't enough time. To save his parents, he needs to send Dongjian and his team to Nambumindong as soon as possible. First, the distribution rate, they'll go with 30% and he'll treat it as an investment. The system notifies that the skill level has increased, residence declaration reached level 10, and he earned 3 skill points. Kim feels something strange, and energy spreads around the entire building. The system congratulates him for declaring an entire building as his and gives him 1 billion won in funds. Construction function unlocked. Jae-hyun asks about construction. The system shows the available facilities. Solar power generator, 133 million won. Shop, 219,900,000 won. Gym, 300 million won. Funds, 1 billion. And annual income, 30 million won. The protagonist looks surprised and asks if only 30 million is generated in a year. He wonders, even though the generator costs 130 million won, to recover that investment, he'd need to keep it running for at least 5 years. The system asks if he'd like to build. The Supreme Recluse says that's not it and thinks there are better ways to use his money. He'd rather use the funds to level up Dongjeon and decides to wait. The system shows the funds, 1 billion won, and this money can only be used to build facilities. Kim looks surprised and says that changes everything. Funds are different from the money in his wallet, so he'll have to use them. The system asks if he'd like to proceed with the construction. Jae-hyun confirms. More notifications arrive. Time remaining until the completion of the solar power generator is 23 hours, 59 minutes, and 59 seconds. Remaining funds, 867 million. The protagonist thinks it won't be enough and asks if he can build another. The system notifies that only one solar generator can be installed per building. The Supreme Recluse asks what the shop is and thinks it's better than he imagined. It's a facility linked to his shop ability. Items he registers can be sold there. What's unique is that no staff is needed to operate the shop. It's a system that produces an object in real time once the payment is made. Great effort was made to produce relief supplies and send them to others. With a shop nearby, people can just buy what they need. He can also set prices and with that increase their income distribution rates. He tells the system to build it immediately. The system asks him to assign the location for the shop. Kim says it'll be in Unit 101. More notifications arrive. Time remaining until shop construction is complete is 47 hours. Jae-hyun says the last facility will be the gym. The gym is a basic training center for citizens. They can improve strength and stamina there. When training, efficiency increases by 200%, and if the citizen is level 15 or lower, efficiency increases to 300%. The protagonist thinks that although he already knew people could level up through exercise, it would be great to give mission rewards with something that good. The system asked for the gym's location. The Supreme Recluse decides to turn the second floor into a gym. Time remaining, 71 hours. Kim looks at his 3 skill points. His shop skill has reached level 5. He can now register up to 500 items. The new feature, individual merchandising, was added, meaning registered items and similar ones can now be purchased individually. Jae-hyun asks what that means. Items that were previously only sold in bundles can now be bought separately. He clicks on water and is impressed to see many options. He thinks that while it doesn't have everything, there are way more options now, and wonders about the other items. There's 1 pack of each: osori, bulldog, ramen soup, jinbambong, and sesame ramen. The protagonist says this will be very useful. Meanwhile, Kang is fighting monsters, moving quickly and landing a solid hit. Deoksu pants heavily, and the leader calls him, asking what would happen if he threw it. Kang asks what he means and why he's asking all of a sudden. Dongjun says he'll borrow it for a moment. He wants to try something. The leader takes it. Deoksu tells him to wait. Dongjun lifts the weapon as mana spreads around him and throws it, launching it far away. Kang, annoyed, asks why he really threw it. The leader tells him to be quiet and to cancel the summon before summoning it again. Deoksu looks surprised. Mana spreads around his body and the weapon returns to his hand. He says that's insane and calls him a genius. Dongjun replies that it's no big deal. The warrior says they need to go since they don't have many arrows left. Then she notices something glowing on the ground. It's arrows, and asks what that is now. The system notifies that another ability can be used when observing an area with supreme eyes. Also, an orc was hunted, EXP obtained, 2,100,338 won were deposited into the Supreme Recluse's wallet. The team completed the mission, 2,332,581 were used, and the citizen leveled up. The protagonist thinks he was right. It's also possible to increase attributes through mission rewards. He's starting to see some hope. His parents' house is about 10 kilometers away, which will take about 3 hours on foot. He opens the door and walks to the elevator. The supreme recluse steps outside and observes the destroyed city from above, saying it's horrible, and he needs to hurry. He'll start with Dongzhon's group first. The system notifies about Moon, who awakened the ability Raven Pact while Gion's Rank C ability is currently being used for reconnaissance. The system shows Yon and Dajung's data, and Kim thinks it would be much better for him to team up with both. But unlike Dajung, who was registered as a vassal, Ju doesn't yet have enough loyalty to qualify. The system notifies that Blessing consumes mental energy to temporarily increase physical abilities by 70%, and Magic Armor consumes mental energy to create a magical armor that protects a target. Jae-hyun thinks that people who awaken abilities from the start have a huge advantage. He looks down and wonders if this is his only choice. The system notifies that the mission reward is the resurrection of her son, but there isn't enough money to provide the reward and suggests trying again after acquiring more. The protagonist thinks it's still not enough, so now he needs to raise the mission difficulty as much as possible. The mission will be to hunt a level 40 or higher monster. A level 40 monster will definitely be strong, but it will guarantee high rewards. Time limit 24 hours. Penalty elimination. The system notifies again that he doesn't have enough money to offer the resurrection reward and to try again later. The Supreme Recluse wonders if the amount of money he has is way too small. More notifications arrive. An orc was hunted, EXP obtained, and 2,788,221 won were deposited into his wallet. Kim realizes it's a group mission. More notifications arrive confirming the mission. Hunt level 40 plus monsters, time limit 24 hours, reward, resurrection of the sun for 1 day, penalty for failure, elimination, and asks if he wants to assign this mission. Jae-hyun thinks he first needs to bring Yeonju completely to his side and says yes. Then someone starts knocking desperately at the door asking if they can come in. The protagonist hears it and goes to the door, opening it. Yeon bursts in, crying, saying to do it now. The Supreme Recluse says yes. There's a time limit, but it's possible. Ju sits on the floor, crying hard, thanking him, and says she's happy to at least have 1 day with him. She just wants to see him. The system notifies that her loyalty has surpassed 30, and she now meets all the requirements to be registered as a vassal. Later, Kim looks at a specific point, intently, and the lights turn on. He thinks it was a success. The next one, he looks at another point, and the faucet starts dripping, then water flows. The system notifies dignity preservation. Jae-hyun says it's cool, and he's gotten used to this to some extent. He feels like he's become a mage. He can now control electricity, water, and gas properly. More notifications arrive. Today's shop revenue is being calculated. 320,981 won were deposited into his wallet. The protagonist thinks 320,000 won, with 20% profit, means today's sales exceeded 1.5 million won. He activates the Supreme Eyes and observes people in the shop. A hooded guy asks how much they need to save. The boy replies that the bow costs 150,000 won, and they made 10,000 won today, so it'll take about 15 days. The hooded guy calls him an idiot and asks what about ramyeon and water for the next 15 days. His partner says it's fine, and if he's so smart, he can calculate it all himself. The Supreme Recluse thinks it's crazy how much the atmosphere changed just by sharing reward money. Ever since the mysterious place known as The Shop appeared on the first floor of the apartment building, the little money earned from hunting goblins began sparking everyone's desire to hunt. Now that there are no more goblins to hunt inside the apartment complex, they have to venture outside. Level ups are progressing well, and they've acquired many new citizens. The system notifies current population 789,11,000, EXP bonus and cash reward bonus plus 100%. Kim thinks things are going to grow exponentially from here on out. The system notifies that he hunted an orc and gained EXP. 1,243,817 won was deposited into his wallet. Meanwhile, the bear woman is attacking the monsters, easily defeating them, biting them, and plasma splattering everywhere until she stops, starts reverting to her normal form, and feels very tired. The healer asks if she's okay, if she's hurt anywhere. Yeon replies that she's fine. Even if it hurts a little, it's nothing to her. Dajung tells her not to overdo it and says she's finishing off monsters before they can even react. Ju apologizes if it seems like she's stealing kills. The warrior asks why she's apologizing for that, since they feel safe and are having an easier time thanks to her. Yeon lowers her head and smiles. The protagonist thinks it was a good idea to pair the two, and it seems obvious considering their specs. The system shows Ju's skills. Her awakened ability is Bear Warrior, Ancient Vital Blood, Primal Frenzy. The warrior gains ancestral vital plasma whenever injured, rank A, which greatly increases regeneration. Primal frenzy causes her eyes to turn red upon seeing plasma, boosting physical abilities by 300%. Meanwhile, the three women notice something, a sound approaching along with a giant monster. They're startled to see a giant orc. Ju begins transforming into a bear, facing the enemy and advancing toward it with a terrifying aura around her body. The orc faces her and swings its weapon. The two clash. The warrior in the corner aims her bow, stares at the enemy, and shoots, hitting him. Yan lets out a loud sound. The orc crashes to the ground. Ju approaches with her huge mouth and devours it, plasma spraying everywhere. The system notifies that an orc captain was hunted. EXP gained 73,263,000, and 99 was deposited into his wallet. Citizen Yan eliminated the leader of Jonpo Station. A requirement fulfilled, an advanced base has been added to the list of buildable structures. It's a safe zone that can be built outside the house. When activated, the designated area will temporarily gain the same effects as the house. However, it can only be active when a citizen with the knight title or higher is present. If an unauthorized person remains in the zone for over a day, it will be destroyed. The protagonist observes and smiles, thinking that an advanced base costs 1.3 billion won, and now that all the orcs are gone, there's a lot of money left. It's worth investing. The system notifies that during the construction, which takes 7 days, 3 citizens with the knight title or higher are required and asks if he wants to build it. The Supreme Recluse thinks to wait. If he decides to build it, the 3 would have to stay there for a week. The biggest loss here would be time. It's an entire week wasted, and he can't afford to spend time like that. Most monsters around Jonpo Station have already been cleared by Dongjun's group and the other citizens too. There's no real need to build an advanced base there. He presses no in the system and keeps thinking it's still a good harvest, and if he can build that where his parents' house is, he'll feel much more at ease. As long as it's inside his territory, he can protect it in the safest way possible. That said, it won't be easy to bring Grandma and Grandpa to where he is now, if they're still alive. Now that it's come to this, he'll send Dongjun's group to his parents' house tomorrow. Meanwhile, in a dark and empty place, Jian watches and says, "This is completely insane." He sees the bear woman defeating orcs and wonders how a human could destroy an orc with bare hands, then thinks, right, she's not human, and that's expected. She was already strong even before receiving Jaehyun's blessings. He wonders how Jaehyun convinced her to join their side since she was definitely obsessed with goblins, and asks himself if maybe she gained a new ability. The system notifies the group's mission. Return with a 1-hour time limit. The reward is a small amount of EXP and there's no penalty for failure. The leader approaches with the warriors and says they're heading back. Gion replies he understood and whistles. A crow approaches. Gion positions his arm and the crow lands on it. The warrior plays with it, asking who's a good boy. Dongjian says he needs it to scout. Gion says he understands. He strokes the crow and whispers for it to be careful. The crow looks at him and flies off over the city. Jaeon watches and says there's no problem. They can leave immediately. The leader thanks him. As they walk, Jaeon notices something and looks back, asking if those are rats. He crouches down, fiddling with something on the ground, and looks back again, facing red eyes. The rat jumps to the ground, walks to the spot he had tampered with, and stops, staring upward intently. Elsewhere, the protagonist says that's why he's asking for help. All the warriors are there and start looking at each other. The Supreme Recluse says he knows very well the chances are low. The leader asks if his family is also in that apartment complex. Kim replies that he can't be sure. Moon says they'll help. Everyone looks at him and Byunggo says to let him help. Dongjun agrees, saying that after all, they've survived this far thanks to him, and to just tell them what needs to be done. Jaehyun looks surprised, smiles, and thanks them, saying that now that all the orcs at Jonpo Station have been eliminated, they can just follow the subway line to Seomayon Station. Jigalchi Station is the closest to his parents' house. They just need to exit through gate number 2 when they get there. After exiting the station, he'll guide them to where his parents should be. He says he's not asking everyone to go right away because he knows it's something he personally wants. And for now, they should focus on securing Seomayon Station. He thanks them again and tells them to rest as much as they can today before carrying out the plan tomorrow. Yeon asks for a moment and has a question. If he can't bring his family here using his ability, the protagonist thinks he tried, thought about having a teleport target as a mission reward. That's why he got so excited when he saw Moon's awakened ability. He thought there might be a chance to bring all his family instantly if things worked out, but the result was a total failure. If he had to guess, it's because his influence didn't reach where Byungko's grandmother was. If that's really the case, he won't be able to do anything, even if his parents are about to die. All because they're outside his influence range. He says that unfortunately, he's not all-powerful. There are things he can and cannot do. However, there's no reason to worry. The promise he made to her is one he'll keep. The system notifies that Ju's trust increased. Yan smiles and thanks him for his honesty. The Supreme Recluse also thanks them all for their time and says they should rest for today. They walk off. The leader says they're leaving now and that he should rest too. Then Kim notices something. The system notifies that someone without entry permission is trying to enter. An entity meeting the requirements to be accepted as a citizen is approaching and asks if he would like to propose citizenship. Jae-hyun activates his supreme eyes and says to grant citizenship. The system notifies that the citizenship proposal has been made. Seo Yejin has accepted. Her awakened ability is Queen of Rats. The protagonist asks if she's awakened and uses supreme eyes, only to see a rat, and is startled asking if it's a rat. 1 hour earlier, the rat had been watching them, wondering who these people were, thinking he couldn't believe humans were capable of massacring orcs. Maybe it's because they're all awakened, and wondering if that's really possible. The rat decided to follow them for now and thought it'd be useful to find out what was going on. It was getting hard to take care of them all alone. His ability alone should be enough, and he would keep observing for now. The rat ran quickly until he stopped and heard voices telling someone to go over there and calling for their mom to look. Children were running and playing. The rat wondered if there were children on the playground, why so many people were inside the building, and what this place was. The rat kept running, thinking he needed to learn more. He ran quickly, climbed the stairs, and when he tried to enter, he hit a barrier and bumped his head. The system notified that entry was prohibited. The rat wondered what it was. More notifications came up, asking if he would like to obtain citizenship. The rat thought, yes, definitely yes. He stared and wondered if it was possible to become a citizen as a rat. The system notified that citizenship had been obtained. The rat got excited that it worked and kept running, thinking it was amazing, until people saw him and started screaming in fear, saying there was a rat. They tried to stomp on him. The rat tried to flee as fast as possible, dazed from being hit. He kept running until he arrived at a training hall and saw the warriors training. The rat watched them and wondered what this place was. Somewhere else, the rat transformed into a woman and said her head hurt. She smiled and said she finally found a way to survive, thinking the problem would be getting there. Somehow she needs to get to Jeonpo Station and thinks that's her only option. She'll have to go through the subway tunnels. The problem is that monster there at Seomayeon Station. Actually, there's a chance precisely because of that, since there's no place she can't enter. The system notifies that a tamed rat was hunted, a small amount of XP was gained, and 1,416 won was deposited into his Supreme Recluse account. Queen of Rats, rank A. All rats that encounter her swear loyalty to her as their queen. When a rat is tamed, it can be controlled and its senses freely shared. The protagonist thinks her ability is to control rats. He activates Absolute Eyes and thinks that imagining a rank A awakened willingly came to him of her own accord. He must make her his vassal at any cost and wonders where she is, if she's not in the vicinity, because she needs to come first to receive the mission. The system notifies that the mission to be granted is to visit the condo with a 48-hour time limit, reward being Coca-Cola and chocolate, and no penalty. It asks if he wants to grant the mission. The Supreme Recluse decides to wait and recalls Ju asking if he couldn't bring his family there with his ability. Kim thinks he tried many times but failed every time. It's because they're outside his influence range. But if a target granted citizenship must be within range, he knows for sure. Since monsters they defeat give money and XP no matter how far away they are. He edits the mission, setting it to visit the condo, time limit of 10 seconds, same reward and penalty set to summon. Jae-hyun thinks this is it. Just imagining being able to use penalties like this. He'll try it even if it's a one-time thing. If he can summon citizens from outside like this, then maybe it's possible to bring his family. If the outpost is active, in theory it acts as his territory, and if he sends Dongjian's group there, builds the outpost, makes all his relatives citizens, then uses the system's mission to summon them to himself, he thinks it's a solid plan. The only question is how much money it'll cost. He decides to try and says to grant the mission. The system notifies 00 minutes and 09 seconds. The protagonist hopes it won't be over a billion won. More notifications arrive. Yejin failed the mission and 31,674,894 won was used. The Supreme Recluse feels relieved. Seo is summoned there and asks where she is. Kim realizes it worked. He stares at her. Yejin is trembling in fear. Jae-hyun greets her by name. Seo is surprised and asks who he is and how he knows her. The protagonist replies he's the one who gave her citizenship. Yejin says to wait. Does that mean she's... The Supreme Recluse interrupts and says yes. They're on the top floor of the condo she saw through the rat, apologizes for bringing her so suddenly. She must be very surprised and says it's a pleasure to meet her. He says his name. Kim hands her the Coke and chocolate. Seo asks if he brought her there and says there was this strange mission. Jae-hyun confirms and says he was the one who sent her. Yejin says that in that case she knows it's kind of bold, but There are people she needs to find and asks if she can bring them too. She says she was going to bring everyone here, but it's difficult due to the distance, which is why she decided to take a gamble. The protagonist asks how many people in total. SEO replies it's 35. The Supreme Recluse didn't expect there to be more people and apologizes, saying that would be very difficult. Yejin is surprised and asks what he means. Kim answers it would be impossible to bring them all with his power. Seo yells, no, says her mother and sister are there, and she'll do anything. Jaehyun watches her and asks for a moment to think. He realizes he was able to grant her citizenship even without her being physically there, meaning the system considered her rat as part of her. There's a chance this could work. He looks at her data and wonders if her trust has already increased this much, and thinks she's in a situation where she has no choice but to trust him. The protagonist calls her and asks if she'll do anything. Yejin replies, yes, whatever it takes. The Supreme Recluse says there's a way to do it, but she must trust him completely. If she says she will fully trust him, he will save her family. Seo stays silent for a moment and then starts saying yes, that she trusts him and will do whatever it takes. The system notifies that Yejin's trust has greatly increased, reaching 50. Loyalty has been unlocked and passed 30, fulfilling all conditions to register her as a vassal. Kim says to register her as a vassal. Mana begins to surge around Yejin's body. She's amazed. The system shows her data. Her awakened ability is Queen of Rats, a tamer who increases the attributes of tamed creatures, boosts their growth rate, and the creatures continue to grow. Those that reach a certain level will be able to evolve. Jaehyun asks if she has any tamed rats around where her family is. Seo nods yes. The protagonist tells her to send one directly to them. Yejin says that's fine. She closes her eyes. The Supreme Recluse activates Absolute Eyes and thinks he can see it. A rat approaches some people and they notice it, asking if it's one of Yejin's rats. The system opens up, delivering various foods and water. They're surprised and say food just appeared out of nowhere, wondering if Seo sent it. The system notifies that Yejin's trust increased significantly. Kim smiles, thinking, just as expected. Her ability and Absolute Eyes are a perfect match, and the idea that he'll now be able to see through the eyes of thousands of rats in the sewers is insane. He now has the best recon troops in history. Later, still in the same place, Seo asks if by Nambu-Mindong he means the area near Songdo Beach. Jaehyun replies yes, and thinks it's a coincidence that she was in Nambu-Mindong because her parents lived there, so it would naturally be more advantageous for her to join Dongjeon's team on the first scouting mission. And all she needs to do is send her rats. With just that, she can confirm if her family is alive, and it would be much easier to send rescue supplies. Yejin says to leave it to her. The system notifies that her trust increased. The protagonist asks if she can start now. She says of course. The Supreme Recluse says she's already doing it. It'd be great if they could use the subway tracks. Seo asks if he's talking about Busan Line 1. He says yes, and that he plans to use that line as a rescue operation route in the future. Yejin shouts that he can't do that. Kim asks why. Seo says there's a monster at Seomyeon Station. Jaehyun asks about the monster, thinks deeply, and asks if she can send a rat to where the monster is. Yejin says yes. The rat is sent there. It approaches the giant monster, which is easily swallowing an orc. The rat tries to be as quiet as possible, but the huge creature looks down, notices it, and opens its enormous mouth. The rat is startled but manages to dodge its bite and runs away. The monster watches, and the rat doesn't stop running. The protagonist saw everything with his ability and thinks that's a huge monster, wondering what level it is. From what he saw, it being over level 40 isn't impossible. Seo asks if he saw it and says Seomayon can't be used. Then she asks about Beomnyagol Station, one stop away, and says she saw how skilled his allies are. They won't have any trouble getting through that place with their abilities. The Supreme Recluse thinks she's not wrong and says they'll go with that and she can go to Unit 2701. Yejin asks what he means. Kim replies that's where she'll be living from now on, but that place needs some cleaning up. Seo thanks him and says she'll go. He tells her to get a good rest and thinks that if he were in her situation, he probably would have come up with the same plan, at least before they met. Jaehyun installs a solar power generator. The system notifies that the remaining construction time is 23 hours, 59 minutes, and 59 seconds. Construction begins, and the protagonist thinks the efficiency is actually quite good, but far from enough electricity for a civilization nearing 800 people. To save money and install more facilities, he needs to increase the number of people working, so he created a 3-shift system. The same applies to new public installations. He watches and says it's time to begin. Time to hunt more. Meanwhile, the warriors are running quickly and the leader says, they're coming, until they stop and get into attack position. Bats approach. The warriors shoot arrows, hitting them directly and eliminating them. The warrior asks if anyone's hurt. They all say they're fine. Gayong brings up the snake at Seomyeon Station. that Jaehyun mentioned and asks if they can really defeat it alone. Hyren replies it'll probably be fine. He can summon them if things get too bad. Gayong says then there's nothing to worry about. The leader agrees, saying there's no reason to feel anxious. They keep walking until they reach the location and are shocked to see shredded orcs and a subway car fallen on the ground. Dongjun says to keep going and endure for now. They keep walking until the leader notices something and shouts for them to stop. He looks frightened upon seeing the giant snake. They start trembling and Kang asks how they're supposed to eliminate a monster like that. Then a huge attack happens. The leader tells everyone to get down. They crouch. The pressure in the area becomes intense. The group mission is to hunt the giant snake with a time limit of 10 minutes. The reward is a large amount of XP and there's no penalty for failure. Deoxo asks what's going on and Gion asks if it's an earthquake, until the leader widens his eyes upon seeing that the group mission assigned to him and Yan is to hunt the giant snake. Dongjeon is shocked and wonders about hunting the giant snake. He looks at the creature and asks what the hell it is and why it's acting that way. The snake's body is covered in plasma. The leader looks at Ju and, even without knowing what's going on, thinks this is it. He grabs his weapon and throws it, hitting the snake directly. The creature roars. A giant snake can swallow its prey whole, but doing so is no easy task. Since it's a living organism entering its stomach, the snake could be in danger if the prey tries to fight back from inside. That's why it usually uses venom to subdue its prey or coils around it to weaken it before swallowing. However, this only applies to fairly large prey. For a single rat, a much smaller organism, it wouldn't bother at all. Even swallowing it alive, the rat moves inside its body and ends up being swallowed. The rat, taken in without much thought, brings consequences no one could imagine. The protagonist smiles and opens the storage, thinking he has two skills he can use: storage and stash. He summons gas and burning cloth. The rat inside the snake's belly starts using all of it, emitting a bright light inside the snake's body and causing a massive explosion. Elsewhere, Seo senses something strange, and the Supreme Recluse asks if she's okay. She replies yes, just a bit surprised. That's all. Kim says she was amazing. He activates his skills and thinks that the snake definitely can't be taken down by himself. It has to be the vassal knights who defeat it, so he can receive 6 times the XP and gold split. Meanwhile, the leader attacks the snake, landing a direct hit. Then Yan transforms into a bear and charges at the enemy, attacking it and causing a massive impact that destroys the snake. Ju stares at the defeated creature and the system notifies that a king snake was hunted and a massive amount of XP was gained. 1,812,043,879 won were deposited into the Supreme Recluse's wallet. Dongjeon and Ju defeated the boss monster of Seomayeon Station. Now it's possible to build an advanced base at the station. Skill level increased, home declaration reached level 15, and 3 skill points were earned. Jaehyun starts to feel something strange. His mana spreads around the building and more notifications arrive saying he discovered beings that meet the requirements to become citizens and asks if he wants to grant them citizenship. The protagonist asks if it's 200 of them and grants citizenship. The system notifies again that the number of citizens has reached 1,000. Since the population hit a certain threshold, all citizens develop basic abilities. Basic, passive, XP and money acquisition rate for citizens plus 100% bonus. The Supreme Recluse wonders what that means. More notifications appear with Minho's data. Kim thinks this is great. It's increasing exactly as described. This literally means that even if he sets the distribution to 0%, he can still receive 100% of XP and gold separately. Seo politely asks, sorry for the question, but could he bring the people who were with her to that place? Jaehyun stays quiet for a moment, smiles, and says of course it's the least he can do. Yejin gets excited and thanks him, and the protagonist asks if she can control the rat again. Seo says of course. The Supreme Recluse says he'll tell the others to follow the rat so she can guide them. Meanwhile, the snake has been defeated, and the rat walks. The warriors also walk behind it until the leader stops and Ju says they've arrived. Dongjeon asks what this is. Yan replies it wasn't her, it was already like that. The leader wonders if this was originally orc territory. He looks at the slain monsters and plasma everywhere. They keep walking with the rat and Dongjeon says that since they defeated the boss monster, the major threat is gone, but they can't let their guard down. The warrior says there may be hidden monster groups lurking. The rat calls them. Kang says this rat is pretty smart. Moon asks if the rat is also part of Jaehyun's abilities. Meanwhile, the protagonist watches them walking through his ability and thinks there's no major danger for now. He looks at his 3 skill points and wonders where to invest. Since the range of activities has expanded, the first investment should definitely go into the Supreme Eyes skill. It has good synergy with Yejin. He tells the system to level up Supreme Eyes. The Supreme Recluse starts feeling strange, puts his hand on his head, and grits his teeth in pain until he sees the warriors fighting goblins and wonders what's going on. Kim keeps watching until a system notification appears saying their 103 centimeters tall goblins that live in groups, possess basic intelligence, can use tools, have surprisingly good vision, can see long distances, and distinguish objects clearly even in the dark. Jae-hyun thinks it's perfect. He needed a skill exactly like this. First, he needs to find monsters of appropriate levels. Just like assigning missions to others, this can save the costs required for resurrection. Next is the dignity preservation skill. Since he'll be meeting many people from now on, their trust and loyalty are even more important. And he tells the system to level up that skill. Suddenly, an extremely loud noise is heard. The protagonist wonders what it was. Was it a gunshot? And thinks this isn't right, asking himself why the goblins are using weapons. The goblins are all armed. The warriors look shocked and start running as the goblins begin shooting nonstop. The female warrior asks how the hell those things got guns. The leader says they can't fight them, then smiles, thinking he has Byongo. Moon stares and quickly teleports, eliminating them with his strikes. More goblins approach with weapons, but someone attacks them first. It's the warrior with her bow, asking how they dare. Kang activates his armor. Ju transforms into a bear and they attack the goblins. Jiyeon and his partner also attack. They all strike together. The protagonist notices a weapon on the ground and registers the item. The system notifies SWMOU 473,321.38 caliber bullets, 100 units, 158,401. The Supreme Recluse widens his eyes and thinks he can't leave this in the store. Having a firearm has clear advantages. People instantly become more proactive in hunting monsters. Even ordinary folks under level 10 could start taking down orcs occasionally. That would massively increase the XP and money citizens earn. However, trusting every citizen isn't easy. The way he's been accepting people has been random. In other words, there's been no filtering. He accepted everyone thinking he could control things no matter what. It's true the benefits increase as the population grows, but things change when weapons enter the equation. There's no guarantee someone with malicious intent isn't among them. Envy, resentment, jealousy, something is bound to happen eventually. In the worst case, someone could die. Only trustworthy people should have access, specifically only those with high loyalty, and he already knows exactly who should receive one first. The goblins are defeated, and Moon notices a weapon that was summoned. He picks it up and thanks Jae-hyun. They keep walking until they reach a door. They open it and see several people inside. Elsewhere, the protagonist walks and sighs, thinking it's nice that the domain now includes the hiking trail too, and thanks them for coming out to meet him. He thought about going for a walk after a while. The system notifies that someone without entry permission is trying to enter. The Supreme Recluse thinks they've arrived. More notifications appear saying beings who meet the requirements for citizenship are approaching, and asks if he'd like to offer citizenship. Kim tells it to offer. Co widens her eyes upon seeing her family and runs to hug the two of them. Her mother asks why she left without saying anything and if she knows how worried they were. Her sister says she smells so good and asks how she took a bath. Yejin nods and says there's hot water there. She can bathe properly. There's even a bed, and also hot meals. Jae-hyun calls her and says it's true that Unit 2701 was given to her, and even though she can use it however she wants, he knows it's a bit cramped for over 30 people. Seo looks at everyone beside her and asks what they should do. The protagonist says he'll add 3 more vacant rooms for her, because she really deserves it. Yejin asks if he's serious and thanks him. The Supreme Recluse says she can use Units 2402, 2301, and 1092. Seo gets very excited and says she'll work hard. The system notifies that her trust increased. Kim pauses and says to wait. He realizes now that he leveled up but forgot to check. The system notifies about beast management. Jae-hyun wonders about beast management and asks if he wants to summon a beast. It's 1 billion won. The protagonist looks shocked and asks himself if that really says 1 billion won, until someone calls out to him and asks if he has a moment. Later, elsewhere, the Supreme Recluse asks what brings her there. Hyerin says she needs to tell him something. Kim tells her to feel free. Hyerin says she's very sorry, but she'll have to leave the group. Jo-hyun is surprised, apologizes, and asks what she just said. Hyerin says she feels like her abilities have no place in the group and everything would be fine without her. The protagonist tells her she can be honest with him. Hyerin starts crying and says she's scared, very scared. The goblins are terrifying, so are the orcs, and the giant snake they faced today gave her chills. And when they were being chased by the crimson tiger, tears roll down her face. She apologizes and says it was always him who saved them. But she herself is useless, and she feels she can't live up to his expectations. The Supreme Recluse thinks he's already been sensing this for a while. Rescuing Moon's grandmother, exterminating the orcs, and fighting the Crimson Tiger, all were missions that put lives at risk. Frankly, she didn't have much to contribute to the group, but he doesn't blame her for that. Her poison mist ability is dangerous. If not used properly, it could harm her allies, so it's hard to use. She definitely put her life on the line too, but must have felt awful seeing how little impact she had. Hyron keeps crying a lot, and Kim says that actually they've been short on staff recently. He asks if she knows Daboon from the 21 Sate Floor community area. He says she's been trying to handle everything alone but seems exhausted. And it won't be just the 21st floor. He was planning to implement community facilities throughout the entire complex, so he was looking for someone trustworthy to manage the work. He thinks he can trust her and asks if she'd be willing to help. He pauses for a moment, then says he firmly believes that if someone wants to keep moving forward, they're far from useless. Her ability is also powerful. Handling poison isn't easy, but he's sure she'll shine one day. If it's hard for her to go out on the field right now, she can work internally for now. And when the day comes that they really need her ability, they'll ask for her help again. Hyron is surprised and smiles. The system notifies that her loyalty has increased, reached 100, and she's now registered as a vassal. Vassal capacity limit increased. Yu says she's sorry for showing her weak side, but she'll give her best, thanks him for everything, and says they'll keep working together. Elsewhere, the protagonist is still looking at the summon beast option, 1,000,000,001, and wonders if he should test it. He says screw it. He'll just do it and summons a beast. The system notifies that 1,000,000,001 was consumed to summon a beast. A bright light is emitted from a magic circle. The Supreme Recluse covers his face from the light and an egg is summoned. Kim watches. The egg starts to crack and glow. Jaehyun keeps watching closely, and the beast hatches. It's a baby bird. The protagonist uses absolute eyes, and the system notifies that it's a three-legged crow, a divine bird with 3 legs, born with the power of the sun. It's still young and needs protection. To grow, it must absorb high-quality sunlight. The Supreme Recluse waves his hand to it. The bird makes a sound and Kim wonders what to name it. He looks at it and says that since it's jet black, what about Pratinho? The bird starts making sounds and Jaehyun asks if it means it liked it. He says that's a relief and asks if it's hungry. Later, still in the same place, the protagonist places a bag of chips on the floor, and Pratinho eats the chips until he burps after finishing. He gets tired and lies down on the ground. The Supreme Recluse kneels and says it's such a carefree bird, until he notices something. More notifications arrive saying the three-legged crow's level has increased, and the solar power generator's efficiency has increased by 100%. A facility that generates electricity using sunlight, producing between 80,000 to 100,000 one per day depending on the sunlight absorbed. Excess energy is credited to his wallet. Kim says wait, and thinks that he still hasn't built solar generators on the 10 new buildings. Almost all his money was used. Honestly, it seemed like a waste to invest 130 million won in a building that only becomes profitable after a year. But with this, things change. More notifications arrive saying the crow's level increased and solar generator efficiency increased by 100%. Jaehyun thinks the annual return is 90 million won. The efficiency of solar generators has tripled. There's no reason to hesitate now, and he says he'll build solar generators on all 10 buildings. The system notifies about the time remaining until solar generator construction is complete. In room 3001, the protagonist rings the doorbell and a voice asks who it is. The Supreme Recluse responds with his name. The door opens. It's Choi, asking what brings him there. Kim says there's something he'd like to ask. Hyung asks what it is. Jaehyun says he wants to entrust his money to him. The two talk until Choi becomes shocked. The protagonist thinks that after reflecting on the tax collection skill, he came to a conclusion. If he entrusts his money to a trustworthy civilian, it'll be profitable. Even though there's a 10% fee on the first grant, it generates a 10% profit margin every month. He wondered who he should trust with it, and realized it had to be Hyung, no doubt. His trust and loyalty are on another level. The system notifies that 1 billion won were given to vassal Choi. 100,030,000 were used for this mission. Hyung's trust and loyalty increased, and he's now registered as a vassal. The vassal limit increased. Choi says of course he wants to manage it. The Supreme Recluse thinks that was his plan all along, but didn't expect Hyung to reach 100 loyalty, and says he can use a portion if he wants. Hyung asks if he's serious and thanks him a lot. Kim says it's nothing and that he's counting on him. He thinks it's time to move on to the next matter. Dabin asks if she can really choose freely. Jaehyun says yes, it doesn't matter. She and Hyron can form a team, and since she's the leader of the 2023 group, he'll double her weekly payment. The system notifies that her loyalty increased. Dabin, excited, grabs her partner beside her and thanks him, saying she'll give it her absolute best. The two head out and Hyron tells her to calm down. The protagonist thinks it's almost time to discuss the tougher topics. In room 2109, the Supreme Recluse says everyone's working hard today and asks if they're okay. The leader replies yes, they're totally fine, and asks why he came to see them. Kim replies that thanks to the monsters that were at Seomayon Station, the surrounding area has become monster-free. The subway tracks especially no longer have monsters. There are no monsters left near Bayomnagal and Bayomil stations, both close to Seomyeon. Now's their chance. Before monsters invade, they need to act first. He thinks that when he saw Yu begging through sobs, he realized something. The people in front of him are risking their lives to carry out his requests. Thanks to CO joining them and informing them in advance about the station's monsters, they avoided an imminent disaster. It could have been extremely dangerous had they not known. In this world, it's not surprising to lose one's life at any moment, and he knows wanting to protect his family and save them might be considered selfish. But even so, he can't give up on them. Jaehyun says he hopes they can head straight to Jagalchi Station tomorrow. Later, somewhere else, the protagonist is having his coffee, and the system notifies that the solar power generator's efficiency increased by 100%, and the three-legged crow leveled up. The Supreme Recluse asks if it's level 5 already. The system notifies that the three-legged crow unlocked a portion of the sun's power, partially inherited the beast summoning power, and awakened basic elemental magic. Kim asks about magic. He moves his finger and asks if this is how it's done. His finger starts releasing flames and Jaehyun realizes it worked. He thinks the sensation is familiar, just like when he used the dignity preservation skill. He looks to the side, then he heads outside and sees no one around. The protagonist closes his eyes and imagines himself unleashing a flame blast as big as a house. He begins moving his hands and flames start to erupt. A large light is emitted. The Supreme Recluse opens his eyes and looks at the fire he created. He realizes it's not quite what he imagined and says that's probably his limit for now. He thinks honestly it's not such an amazing ability. He uses gas summoning and thinks that if it's combined with the gas created by dignity preservation, it becomes quite dangerous. It's still low level for now, but the potential is limitless. Pratinho will keep growing. He decides to wrap up the experiments here. It's time to eat. The system notifies that the solar power generator installation has been completed. Kim thinks Pratinho has leveled up 3 times since this morning. Thanks to that, generator efficiency increased 8-fold. And now, even after supplying electricity, there's excess energy left over, something that can be directly converted into money in his wallet. And he says, she's here. CO thanks him for the time he gave her to rest and says thanks to that, she was able to rest properly. Jaehyun says he simply offered fair compensation for her ability. He thinks that thanks to Yejin, the range of skill usage has expanded greatly, and he can't afford not to take care of her, so he tells her to give her best again today. Dongjun's group is at Seomyeon Station, and she can accompany them. Seo says she already sent some rats through the subway route, and they can reach Choryang Station without issues. The protagonist asks if it's only up to Choryang Station, if there's a problem after that. Yejin replies yes, specifically at Busan Station, and says it's better if he sees for himself. She closes her eyes and begins releasing mana around her body, showing the area beyond the station, full of rubble and blocked passageways. The Supreme Recluse looks through his ability and says that at this rate, they won't be able to get through. SEO explains that as he can see, the tracks are in that condition, so she tried sending rats above ground, but it didn't help much. Kim observes and realizes there isn't a single intact building in sight. Everything collapsed. He wonders what the hell happened. And are those footprints? Now he understands why there are no standing structures, why all the roads are destroyed. That is, until the air pressure gets heavy and everything starts to shake. Jaehyun thinks the building might collapse at this rate. The protagonist asks if she's okay. CO replies yes and asks what that was. The Supreme Recluse thinks about the tremors until someone calls him and says he needs to see something. Kim says they should head out first and asks what's going on. Choi apologizes and asks him to come to his apartment. Jaehyun thinks this is suspicious. Hyung's room has a clear view of Seomyeon Station. That loud explosion earlier, and now he's calling him out of nowhere. No way. Choi keeps guiding him. The protagonist looks out the window and wonders why it's always like this. Why bad feelings are always so accurate. He sees a giant monster destroying everything around. The Supreme Recluse summons a vassal, and the warriors are all summoned. The leader asks why they're there. Moon wonders if it was because of that earthquake earlier until they all look up, surprised, at the sight of a giant monster. They ask what that thing is. The monster walks toward them. Choi says it's heading their way. Dongjeon asks what's going on. Kim says they have to stop it and wonders how, if his ability can handle that monster's attack. He grits his teeth until someone calls out to him. It's Ju, saying to let her handle it. Jaehyun looks at her and senses her fighting spirit burning against that giant. He stays silent for a moment, then smiles and asks if she thinks she can do it. Yeon replies that she'll do her best. The system notifies that a mission will be granted. Mission: hunt the Cyclops. Time limit: 24 hours. Reward: resurrection of her son. Penalty for failure: extreme pain for 1 day. The protagonist says he'll now give a mission briefing and tells everyone to listen closely. After some time, still in the same place, the Supreme Recluse asks if everyone understood. They reply yes. Team 1, Ju, Dongjun, Dajung, and Kong. Team 2, Gayoung, Moon, and Jion. And lastly, Team 3 will be himself and Seo. He'll handle things there and the others must go to their designated positions. He's counting on them all. Then someone calls out to him. It's you, saying that as instructed, those who completed military service were sent to the front gate and the rest of the residents were guided to the underground parking lots. Kim thanks her and says she should go to the underground parking too. Hiren says she wants to help too, even if just a little. Her hands are trembling. Jaehyun observes and asks if she'll be okay. Yu says she's scared but will try to be brave. The protagonist smiles and tells her to come to the front gate with him. Elsewhere, someone is counting 98, 99, 100, 101. And it's the Supreme Recluse, thinking that out of 1,200 people, only 101 completed military service. That's an absurdly low number. A boy shyly asks what they should do. Kim asks where Seonggyeob and the twins are. Seungmin looks embarrassed and Jaehyun realizes they ran away. Seonggyeob and hundreds of others fled unnoticed through the parking lot. The protagonist grits his teeth, thinking they're cowards. The people gathered here aren't fools risking their lives blindly. They came because they know they'll die if they don't fight. They came to protect their precious families and themselves. Someone once said, "Courage isn't about not feeling fear, it's about not giving in and acting despite fear." To survive in this fear-consumed world, they need people with true courage, and he thanks them for being there. He'll buy 101 weapons and ammunition. Also, the XP and loot rates for everyone will be adjusted to 100%. Everyone can now pick up their weapons and ammo in front of them. And this time, it's real weapons. With these, they might actually stand a chance. Kim thinks that those who choose to face fear will be rewarded. He looks to the side and activates his supreme eyes. Meanwhile, the monster emits loud roars. The leader, hiding, observes and strikes, hitting the monster in the leg. The monster screams and notices him, trying to attack. Then Ju approaches and strikes it. The monster notices her and slams the ground, throwing her far away. Yeon screams as she crashes down, creating a massive impact. She's seriously injured. The giant moves in close to her body until someone calls out using a megaphone. It's Kang, calling it an idiot. The monster turns its head, and Deoksu hits it in the leg, realizing it's still intact. He wonders what the hell this monster is and why it's like that, then says to wait a moment. The giant starts moving its legs and running toward him. Kang looks terrified and runs. The protagonist sees it's approaching and tells everyone to get ready. It'll be there soon. Daksu keeps running and screaming loudly. The residents are inside a barrier. The crow swoops in and quickly attacks the enemy. The warrior stares at it, aims her bow, and fires, piercing its hand and hitting its face. The monster lets out an agonizing roar. Moon holds rats in his lap. They jump off and rush toward the monster's mouth. Byung-ho calls out to Jaehyun. Kim realizes everything is going according to plan so far. He summons gas. The giant widens its eyes as smoke starts coming out of its mouth. The protagonist thinks that when the opportunity to finish it comes, he must end it without hesitation. Basic fire attribute, an explosion erupts, flames burst out. The smoke clears, the monster begins to move. People watch and say the giant is leaning. The Supreme Recluse says to hold positions and thinks everything is perfect so far. Now, the citizens will concentrate their firepower on the creature's head through the defense wall. Ideally, the final blow should be dealt by a vassal. Dongjeon or Yeon would be perfect, but they haven't arrived yet. Even Yejin with her knight title would be good. Choi yells behind him. Kim says it's fine, the monster will crash into the wall anyway. Jaehyun looks and realizes the monster is still alive, says it's impossible, and wonders if it really withstood the attacks. The giant raises its arm and attacks. The system notifies that an unauthorized entity is trying to enter. The protagonist observes and thinks it's blocked. Choi yells to fire. The residents begin shooting non-stop at the monster. The giant keeps screaming, and the Supreme Recluse thinks that even though they managed to stop it this time, there's no guarantee they'll endure another hit of that scale. If it breaks through just once, it'll be catastrophic. In that case, Kim activates Invisible Hand Gigantification, an ability he unlocked by investing saved skill points. He always saves it for emergencies. The giant raises its arm again to strike. The residents shout that it's coming again. When the monster attacks, the system keeps notifying, "Unauthorized entity trying to enter. Unauthorized entity trying to enter." The residents smile and keep shooting, saying the wall is holding up against the giant's attacks. While the monster is attacked, it keeps screaming. Jaehyun thinks it's not like the attacks are doing nothing. Even the bomb rats and citizen pistol shots are causing accumulated damage. If they keep it up, they might bring it down, but they still need something capable of a decisive blow. The monster is attacked from behind by the leader, and the protagonist thinks they've arrived. The warriors approach. The monster opens its mouth and lets out a loud sound. The Supreme Recluse says he's counting on them. The system summons a standard supply spear. Dongjon prepares his weapons, locks eyes with the monster, and throws them at the enemy. Arrows fly and strike it. The warrior attacks too, saying they'll provide cover from that side as well. She shoots her bow. The system notifies that the three-legged crow leveled up. The solar generator efficiency increased by 10%, and the generator reached maximum efficiency. The three-legged crow has partially unlocked the power of the sun, inherited part of the summoned beast's power, and its basic fire magic evolved into intermediate fire magic. The three-legged crow has detected an enemy invasion in the territory. The three-legged crow requests power release. Kim asks about power release and thinks that if it's calling this an invasion, it must be referring to the Cyclops, and wonders what something so small is planning to do. The system notifies that 300 million won will be consumed. Jae-hyun, shocked, exclaims, 300 million? An extremely bright light bursts forth.